Wherever this man goes, everyone panics. A big part of that is due to his size, and that's because he belongs to the barbarian race. The emperor himself reported after returning from the frozen lands. That place has terrifying beasts capable of causing earthquakes and even poisoning an entire river. But the worst of all is that absurdly strong race that lives there. The barbarians possess absolute strength. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, at one point the protagonist is assigned to clear a dungeon with ordinary humans. They are strong, but they are still human. According to them, it was only possible to defeat skeletons with several blows to the back of the neck. However, he pulverizes them with just one finger as if it were nothing. The dungeon boss wasn't even supposed to be there because it was so strong. Only masters with extremely high levels would have a chance against that thing, but the barbarian pulverizes it with just one punch. That's the level of power we're talking about. Not even human women or elves will be able to control themselves around him. Strength is something that attracts females. They want big and strong babies. A master swordsman known as a hero throughout the entire kingdom, he gets beaten up as if he were just a bandit. He is completely humiliated. So now I'm going to tell you how this man became so strong, and I'm also going to tell you a little more about this world. Every night, he dreamed about getting out of his boring life. More than anything, he wanted to wake up in a fantasy world, so he quit his job and searched everywhere for a way in. Then one day, his wish finally came true, but not how he hoped. It turned into a nightmare. He was reborn as a barbarian named Kettle, and dropped into a frozen hell called the White Wasteland, packed with absurdly strong monsters. For years, he's been stuck there while a strange system repeats the same line. Quest incomplete. And today starts like any other day in the White Wasteland. Two barbarians bring down a giant scorpion and tear it apart. Then Kettle walks over, purple light flashing as he cuts the remaining monsters to bits. He sighs, saying only barbarians could be proud of being this clueless. The girl blinks and asks, "What's clueless? Can you eat it?" Before he can answer, they start scarfing down the nasty, stringy monster meat like it's amazing. It's been less than a week, and they're doing this again, while the girl and the bald guy proudly give him a thumbs up, calling it a noble challenge. Then the bald guy suddenly freezes. His body starts shaking and foam spills from his mouth. A second later, he drops and vomits green bile. The girl panics and keeps smacking him, but Katala's had enough. He turns away and mutters that he's going for a walk. Elsewhere in the wasteland, a group of mercenaries keeps moving forward. One complains about the cold, and another says crossing this place is suicide no matter the pay. Their captain shuts it down. They all knew what they signed up for, even if none of them expected it to be this awful. Inside a warm carriage, an old butler listens to the arguing. After clearing his throat, he turns to his passenger and asks if she's all right, my lady. The woman, Melina Akasha, smiles and says she's fine. As the butler grumbles about the mercs being rude, Melina tells him not to be too hard on them. They were the only ones willing to take this job. She worries they look half frozen and asks if they should be let inside, but he firmly says no, and reminds her of this place's legends. Melina goes quiet. When she mentions the monsters, the butler says the real danger might be worse. He brings up the emperor, the only person said to ever return alive from this frozen hell. That man came back raving about monsters like giant serpents and bears that could shake the earth. But his final warning was simple. The monsters weren't the worst thing here. The barbarians were. The butler brushes it off as just a legend, but Melina isn't fully convinced, since many of those monsters turned out to be real. Still, he laughs and points out that no one has ever actually seen a barbarian, and she can't really argue with that. Suddenly, the mercenary captain shouts for everyone to stop. Something's out there, he says, while another man asks what he sees. They peer into the blizzard and spot a lone figure, but it's still too hard to make out. The captain goes tense and says he's got good news and bad news. When they tell him to spit it out, he says the good news is that it's small. The bad news is it's coming straight at them. At once, everyone goes on edge. The captain draws his sword as the figure gets closer. Then he finally sees it clearly. It's not a monster. It's a person. The man keeps walking forward, and they realize it's Kettle. He stops and fixes them with glowing purple eyes. The mercenaries stiffen in shock as the truth hits them. A barbarian just like the stories. Kettle only smiles. He'd gone for a walk because he was bored of his tribe, and now he introduces himself as Kettle the Ashen Barbarian, pleased to meet them. After sizing them up, he guesses they're merchants with hired guards. He advises them to turn back, already knowing they won't. His attention shifts to the carriage. The captain starts to panic, but Kettle just grins and makes a wild offer. Hire him. He explains that he wants to guide them through the wasteland. The captain carefully asks whether he's an enemy. Kettle answers with a smile. If he were, they'd all be dead already. That leaves the guards pale and speechless. The captain knocks on the carriage and asks his lady if she heard everything. Lena says she did. He leaves the final choice to her, and she asks the one question that matters. What happens if they fight him? After looking Kettle over, the captain gives an honest answer. He strongly advises against it. After a brief pause, Melina agrees to accept the offer. The captain heads back to Kettle with her answer. She agreed, and Kettle's eye glows as he smiles. To him, that's excellent news. He steps forward, making the mercs flinch. Now he wants to speak to the real one in charge. The captain warns him not to try anything, but Kettle only answers with the same calm grin. With no better option, the captain leads him to the carriage. He ignores the others' protests. His employer already agreed, and fighting Kettle would be suicide. Inside, the butler is nearly losing it, but Melina tells him to stay calm. Then Kettle knocks and politely asks if he may come in. The butler lets out a shrill scream, while Milena calmly answers, "Yes, come in." Outside, Kettle smiles to himself. His plan worked. The old butler is drenched in sweat and terrified. Across from him, Kettle sits calmly with his arms crossed. His voice is much gentler than expected, as he tells the old man to relax. He says he has no plan to hurt him, though the butler clearly doesn't believe a word of it. Meanwhile, the girl can only stare. She can't believe a legendary barbarian is right in front of her. She awkwardly greets him, and he smoothly answers that the pleasure is his. Kettle notes how warm the carriage feels despite the storm outside. The blue-haired woman says it's because of magic, and that catches his full attention. He's never seen real magic before. Then he warns them their odds of getting through are low, which is why he'll protect their lives, but there is one catch. He says he has a single condition. Nervous, she asks what he wants. Kettle smiles and reveals his price. He doesn't want money or power, just information about the world beyond the snowfields. That completely throws her off. That's all? He nods, knowing it's a great deal for her. And really, she doesn't have much choice, so she agrees. Satisfied, he asks for her name. She formally introduces herself as Melina of House Akasha. He answers with his own name, Kettle, and the deal is set. A flashback shows Kettle's old life, just a fantasy fanatic, buried in books and games. Then one day he woke up as a barbarian in this frozen wasteland. There was no time to panic. The cold could kill him, and monsters were everywhere. So he fought, survived, and eventually became the leader of his tribe, always trying to escape the snowfield. But every time he tried to leave, a system window appeared and told him the quest was incomplete. Just when he was close to giving up, people from the outside finally appeared. That's when he realized the world beyond this snowy prison was the exact fantasy world he'd always wanted. From then on, he stopped merely surviving and started grinding. He cleared quest after quest with one goal: getting out. That's why information from outsiders like Melina matters so much to him. The problem is, every other human he's met either attacked him right away or lost their mind in the cold. So for once, he's glad to be having a normal talk until he shifts the topic. He points out that they're carrying a lot of weapons. He can hear the steel rattling in the wagons, so he asks straight up if there's a war outside. Melina confirms it. The Empire and the Kingdom are at war, so the world beyond the ice isn't peaceful either. She says the Empire has more troops, but the Kingdom is still standing because of swordmasters and a hero. That instantly grabs Kettle's attention. A hero, a swordmaster. He wants to know how strong they are. Melina realizes he doesn't understand the terms and asks if he's ever heard of mysteries. Then she explains the power system. Everything is built around something called mystery. Only a small number of people can use it, and they're split into 5 ranks. At the bottom is third rate, people who can sense the power, but can barely use it. Then comes second rate, where they start using it for real. Next is first rate, the level of normal knights and mages who turn that power into mana or aura. Above that are beings who have gone beyond human limits. Those are the transcendent ones, strong enough to split the heavens. The Swordmaster is one of them. At the very top is the hero, a legendary figure whose power can change the world itself. She adds that even a low third-rate person would be impressive in a small town. After hearing all that, Kettle gives a simple answer. He wants to meet them. Melina is stunned. He's dead serious after being trapped in this frozen hell for so long, fighting just to stay alive. He sees this fantasy world as a prison, and all he wants is to find out what's waiting beyond it. His face turns firm with resolve. He says he really wants to leave this place. Then he changes that, wearing a sure little grin. It is not just something he wants. He has to get out. As the wagon keeps moving, Melina finally asks what she has been wondering. Is he really the barbarian? He does not deny it and points out that she has clearly heard of him. She says yes. She knows him from an old legend. Now Kettle is stunned. There is a legend about him? Melina cannot believe he does not know his own story. Kettle laughs, thinking back to a wild knight he met before. So that guy was the emperor, huh? Still, he acts casual and says the legend is probably true enough. Then he gets back to what matters. Why are they dragging all these weapons through the snow? She clearly does not want to say and stumbles over her words, but under Kettle's hard stare, she gives in. Her family badly needs money. They were once wealthy merchants, but their rivals ruined them and now they are buried in debt. Kettle figures it out right away. She is selling weapons to the kingdom for the war against the Empire. His reasoning is simple. The Empire already has a huge army, so they would not need more weapons. The kingdom would. He adds that with demand high and supply low, the profit must be huge, big enough to make her risk her life. He goes even further, guessing her land borders the Empire, which is why she had to take this crazy route. Melina is left speechless and can only admit he got it exactly right. She is badly shaken. The stories made him sound like a dumb brute, but he is anything but that. Now she wonders who he really is. Before he can answer, the carriage jerks to a halt. Then comes a horrible screech. While everyone else panics, Kettle stays calm. He already knows they are not alone. A moment later, a giant black slime bursts out of the snow, and the whole group freezes in fear. Kettle only narrows his eyes while Melina confirms the worst. This is a legendary monster from old records. She says the snowfield is the graveyard of powerful warriors, and the few who made it back all warned about this very creature. But Kettle just grins like he is amused, saying of course they are chewy and make decent snacks. Melina is completely stunned. He eats them. He tells her to catch one herself if she is curious, leaving her with nothing to say. The monster does not wait for the argument to end. With another shriek, it charges straight at them. The guards start panicking, and Melina shouts for Kettle to help. Kettle does not move. He folds his arms and says he will step in only if things get truly dangerous. To Melina's shock, he says her mercenaries can handle it. He wants to see what fighters from the outside can do. The slime crashes toward them, and the captain instantly calls for a shield wall. One soldier raises his shield just in time, ready to take the monster's full hit, but it is not enough. The blow is brutal, and the soldier is launched backward. Another fighter rushes in with an axe, only to get thrown back too, his attack doing nothing. The leader quickly figures something out. The slimes only move in straight lines, so he orders everyone to spread out and attack together. This time it works. A spearman plants his weapon, vaults over the beast, and lands a solid strike on its side. The monster screams, and the fighter takes his chance, pouring energy into the spear for an even stronger blow. As the slime staggers, the captain rushes in with a glowing sword. He orders his men to keep attacking and points out its weak spot, a hidden core. Charging up his blade, he brings down a huge slash. It lands perfectly, shattering the red crystal core, and the monster starts to melt away. They win, and the mercenaries break into cheers. But Kettle just watches, totally unimpressed. Then the next threat appears, a pack of giant wolves. One merc gets a little too confident and says maybe the stories about this place were exaggerated. The captain shuts that down at once, warning him they are not even halfway through yet. At the same time, some of the mercs start whispering. They are getting suspicious of Kettle, calling him deadweight and wanting to test him. One of them steps away from the group and goes straight to Melina, saying they need to talk. He reminds her they are risking their lives on this job. She nods gratefully, saying they were the only ones brave enough to take it. But he says there is one problem. The barbarian Kettle has done nothing to help, so he asks permission to test his strength and see if he really deserves special treatment. Melina is clearly taken aback as the mercenary captain lays it all out. He lets out a sigh, admitting he tried to stop his men, but they refuse to listen. Kettle only smirks, not bothered at all. If they want to test him, fine, just not now. The mercenary is thrown off by that. Kettle looks past them with axe in hand. They will have to wait, there is something else coming. A cold presence falls over the group, and a deep voice mocks the frail mortals who have arrived, saying it is about to enjoy a rare meal. Then a massive white serpent bursts from the snow and roars for them to bark. It taunts them, saying their struggle will only make them taste better. Melina lets out a scream, while the guards struggle just to endure the monster's pressure. Then a sharp voice cuts through it all. Enough. Kettle looks truly annoyed as he says they are his guests and orders the attacker to back off. He demands to know why it is here. The snake hisses back, asking if he forgot the laws of this land. He is far beyond his tribe's territory. Kettle snaps that it is none of its business, which only makes the serpent madder. Power surges from the creature as it declares its true status, roaring, "I am the snake. How dare you order one who was promised immutability?" Kettle is done listening. "Then you need to be taught a lesson," he says, and throws a punch that sends out a huge shockwave. It slams into the giant snake, exploding in crackling blue energy and blasting the other barbarians backward. Melina is thrown off her feet, and one of her men shouts her name in panic. When the blast fades, the snake's head is a bloody wreck in the snow. Kettle coldly says this is the kind that only learns after a beating. Melina can only stare. "Lord Kettle," she whispers. She is still in shock from what she just saw. With his eyes glowing purple, Kettle tells her he will be there in a moment, after he finishes taking out the trash. He stomps the ground, splitting it apart with dark energy, then launches himself ahead at blinding speed. Another explosion shakes the plains. A few minutes later, Melina and the butler are stunned to see the mercenaries begging Kettle to forgive them. Back inside the battered carriage, Kettle stays calm and says he understands why they would not trust a stranger. The trip goes on, and somehow the butler ends up outside the carriage. Kettle turns to Melina, suddenly serious, and says there is something he wants to know. He asks why a noble woman like her would risk her own life on a mission this dangerous. After a short pause, she admits she is the daughter of a concubine, the second wife of Lord Akasha. Her mother, she explains, was used for politics and then cast aside, left with no real power. Clenching her fist, she says they are treated like servants, family only in name. She says she chose this trade mission herself, which catches Kettle off guard. Her reason is simple: someone has to lead by example. A faint smile touches Kettle's face. He calls her smart, ambitious, and greedy. Melina is left speechless by that, but before she can answer, the carriage jolts again. Someone calls out that they have arrived, and when her men step out, they stare in awe. The blizzard is gone, giving way to a green valley. After thanking Kettle, Melina says the trip back should be easier once the weapons are sold. Still, she cannot stop thinking about what he said. She turns and asks what he meant by calling her ambitious. He says exactly that. He knows her once powerful family is close to financial collapse, and if she succeeds where the main house failed, she will earn everyone's loyalty. Then he asks if her real goal is to take control of the family. She admits he is right. Kettle smirks and says the story of a cast-off heir rising to power is a classic. Melina is stunned by how sharp he is. Then, thinking about his strength, she gets an idea and asks whether he has ever considered leaving the snowfields. Would he like to join her? He refuses for now, saying there are still things he must finish. Melina accepts that calmly. Then she takes the emblem from around her neck and offers it to him as a sign of their meeting. If he ever comes to the outside world, she says, he should show it to the Akasha family. Kettle takes the gift with a wide grin. Then they part, hoping to meet again, as he watches her carriage head into the green valley and away from the snow. 5 years pass, and in the endless snow, a long-awaited notice appears. All conditions have finally been met. A string of system messages follows, confirming the quest is complete, and the rewards have been given. Then the line he has been waiting for appears at last. You may now leave the snowfields. Keito stands at the border of the wasteland, ready to enter the fantasy world he always dreamed of. With a confident grin, Keito looks ahead, ready for a fresh start. It is time for his first real step into that world. In a green forest, Keito takes a deep breath, finally enjoying this new world for real. He takes in the smell of grass, wild beasts, and fresh river water. Nothing like the frozen wasteland he escaped. He opens his eyes with a huge smile. Nice, very nice. Then his mood changes. He turns sharply and locks onto a distant frozen peak. You cursed snow, let's never meet again. He roars, finally free. This is the fantasy world he's wanted for so long. A place he once thought he'd never reach. The road here was brutal, but he made it. Now he's going to enjoy every second of it. Magic swords, dragons, elves, everything he hoped for is here. That dream of starting over is what kept him alive. Back in the snowfield, surviving alone was never enough. As he walks on, something shining in the distance catches his attention. A glow up ahead, maybe a village. Finally, people, he's thrilled. At last, a real village. He remembers trying to talk to the barbarians back home, only to get blank stares. He's missed real conversation, so he starts planning what to say. Maybe a simple hello, maybe something more dramatic. In the end, he decides to act normal and polite, then runs toward the lights. Meanwhile, in a quiet clearing, an old elf speaks to his people. He tells them this will be their new home. The village bursts into cheers. After everything, they finally have a place of their own. Still, one young elf steps forward and asks if this place is really safe. The elder answers without hesitation. It is, but the young elf still worries. Humans may not be able to come here, but the snowy plains are close, and monsters live there. The elder brushes it off. Nothing has crossed those plains in thousands of years, and they set up a barrier just in case. He says the barrier is ancient elven magic. It hides the village and keeps others away. And even if someone got through, he says they still have Queen. He's sure nothing can threaten them. He's very wrong. At that moment, Hansu steps forward and feels his hand pass through something strange, like tearing cloth. He stops, puzzled, wondering what that was, then shrugs and keeps going. But a sudden sound makes him stop. Looking through the grass, he spots a small child with pointed ears. An elf! He can hardly believe it. A real elf. And this soon too. What luck. The little girl, though, is lost and close to tears, scared she wandered too far. Then she hears a voice behind her. Her eyes go wide as Hansu leans over and gives her a friendly hello. The poor girl freezes in fear and faints on the spot. He just stands there, holding the passed-out child. A bead of sweat runs down his face. He didn't even get to explain, and she already passed out. After a moment, he figures he should take her back to the village. In his head, he imagines returning the lost child and getting welcomed like a hero. So he carries her into the elven village with total confidence. Instead, the elves panic. They scream that a human has their child. Spears are shoved at his face, and they demand to know who he is and how he broke their barrier. So much for that plan. The girl's mother cries out in horror, terrified. The elder is stunned. No human should be able to reach this place, and the barrier was supposed to be perfect. When he notices the barrier is damaged, panic sets in. He calls for the queen, but she's out on patrol. Hansu tries to say he's not an enemy, but no one listens. One elf yells for him to return the child, or they'll hunt him down. The elder's thoughts race. That barrier was ancient magic. No normal trick could break it. So he decides this had to be planned. That humans must have been tracking them for years. He is baffled. Does he really look like a kidnapper? Either way, he knows he has to fix this fast. Then the little girl in his arms starts to wake up. He carefully sets her down and tells her to go back to her family. She looks up at his gentle face, but all her frightened mind sees is a huge dark monster. So she lets out a shriek and runs to her parents. That hits Hansu hard. Is his face really that scary? He raises his hands and tells the elves he returned the child. So he's clearly not their enemy. The elder doesn't care. Now that the hostage is free, he orders everyone to attack. At once, the elven archers draw their bows and aim at the very confused him. They fire and a volley of magic arrows rushes straight at him. He just stands there, stunned. They still won't listen. So much for elves being gentle. Out here, it's survival first. The arrows pour down, but Hansu doesn't budge. They bounce off him like toys. The elves panic and keep shouting to fire, certain his defense has to break eventually. He has had enough. He lifts one hand, ready to end this. Then in a single instant, he releases a huge shockwave. It blows apart the elves' position and sends the archers flying. Someone cries out for a barrier, but it's far too late. Trees are torn from the ground as the elves are thrown through the air, screaming. When it all settles, an old elf can only stare and wonder what just happened. At the end of the trench stands Hansu, calmly saying he is not their enemy. Then he awkwardly admits he may have used a bit too much power. Suddenly, a flaming phoenix arrow shoots straight at his head and explodes on impact. The old elf and the others are left staring in confusion. Then an elegant elven woman lands nearby. It's Queen, and she demands to know what's happening. The elder quickly tells her a human attacked them. Her expression turns cold. If a human got in, then this place isn't safe anymore. But Hansu walks out of the smoke without a scratch and asks them again to please listen. Both the elder and Queen are stunned. He took a direct hit from her and still isn't hurt. From above, Queen glares at him, clearly disgusted by humans and convinced he's here for her people. She names herself as the Queen of the Leaf Clan and draws another arrow. Pointing the burning shot at him, she says he will pay for his greed. Hansu is completely confused. They're speaking the same language, so why won't she listen? Maybe humans and elves really do hate each other that much. With a sigh, he gives up on talking. Sometimes people only listen after getting hit. Queen releases the arrow and blue energy crackles around it. This isn't a normal shot. It turns into a huge roaring spirit beast. Hansu answers by clenching his fist and gathering a crazy amount of power. One punch and a blast of pure force smashes into the beast. Queen can only stare in total shock. His attack overwhelms hers completely. Oops, he did it again. The explosion wipes out the spirit beast and slams Queen into the ground, leaving her buried in rubble. Hansu scratches his cheek, wondering if he should have held back even more. Queen looks up, pale and terrified, unable to say a word. She realizes he's on the level of a transcendent. Why would someone that strong be here? Sweating, she urgently tells everyone to run. The elves hesitate, but she screams again and orders them to flee for their lives. Once they start running, she turns back to face Hansu, shouting that he will never reach his goal. He is more confused than ever. He only wanted to talk, and now everything has gone off the rails. Queen still won't listen. She closes her eyes and starts a powerful spell. When they open again, she unleashes a huge burst of fire, and a giant bowl of flame rises from a magic circle. Hansu lights up with excitement. A summon. He remembers the ugly monsters from the frozen wasteland, but this is different. A grand bowl with blazing horns. Now that's a real spirit. This is the fantasy world he wanted. Queen gives the order to destroy the enemy, but the high-rank fire spirit just grumbles that contracts are a pain. She cuts him off with one sharp word, silence. She knows older, stronger spirits have bigger egos. Summoning this one is hard enough, and she only got the contract with help from another tribe, so she firmly orders Tigo to fulfill the contract. The spirit stomps its hoof, ready to fight, asking if all it has to do is kill the human. Then it finally gets a good look at Hansu and freezes. He's standing there with a dark aura and a terrifying grin. The mighty spirit is shaken to the core. Is that thing even human? The giant firebowl towers over the battlefield, roaring with power. He can barely contain himself. This is straight out of a fantasy story, and now it's real. But before he can enjoy it, a voice calls out, "Human, you have entered our land." The firebowl Pigo glares at him, and growls that a weak human has no right to want anything from nature's races. It says it'll burn him to ash, but Kettle doesn't even react. If anything, he just looks confused. Pigo doesn't wait. Its eyes blaze, it digs in its hooves, and power starts building fast. Then it charges like a fireball meant to wipe him out. Kettle doesn't move. He just gets ready to take it. The impact is brutal, ripping up the ground. Even the elf queen gets blasted back by the shockwave. When she looks up, she can hardly believe it. Kettle stopped the bull with one hand, just grabbed a horn and held it. The huge beast hangs there, its full charge cancelled like it meant nothing. Kettle gives a cold grin. To him, a beast body only makes this simpler. Purple power flashes in his eyes as he pulls back his fist, thinking the easiest answer is to beat it to death. The queen can only stare in horror. Then Kettle throws one punch. A blinding burst erupts on impact, and the shockwave tears a giant trench through the forest. The blast is massive, rising like a mushroom cloud. When it ends, the land is wrecked. The elf screams as the burning aftershock races toward her. Once the dust settles, she drops to her knees and stares at the ruin. All she can whisper is that this can't be real, while looking at the huge crater he made with one hand and one punch. Then she looks up at Kettle, calmly standing by the edge. Shaking with fear, she lowers her head and begs him to spare her people. Kettle simply tells her he isn't her enemy. Elf. She looks up, stunned. What is happening? This was all one huge misunderstanding. A really bad one. Ashamed, she bows and apologizes for judging him so fast. She says they mistook him for an enemy because he just brought back a lost elven child. Now she feels awful. Kettle understands. Other humans made them this wary, though he's still annoyed they never let him explain. Still cautious, she asks one more time if he's really not with the humans hunting them. Kettle says no, this is his first time seeing an elf. He's from the White Wasteland, where elves don't live. Her eyes widen at that. The White Wasteland. Kettle says that's right. They call him the Ashen Barbarian of the Wasteland. She can barely process it. She didn't think any human could survive there. Then she asks if more people from the Wasteland could come too. Kettle folds his arms and says maybe, but he doubts it. The place has strict laws, even giant serpents can't break. He only got through because of a hidden quest that let him bypass those rules. He thinks it was a one-time exception. Relieved, the elf lets out a breath. Then Kettle asks if the spirit she called is okay. He starts sweating a bit, remembering he kind of punched that bull in half. She tells him it's fine, it was a spirit, not a normal summon, so forcing it out just send it back home. Wanting to repay him, she offers whatever help she can. That gets Kettle interested. A spirit, huh? He quickly asks if non-elves can make contracts too. Her expression drops, and she says that may be impossible. Only humans deeply tied to nature can do that. So for someone like him, it probably won't work. Then she pauses and gets an idea. If he truly wants a spirit contract, he should go to Elfo Sagrado. Kettle repeats the name, curious. It's the holy land of the elves, where their god resides. If it can happen anywhere, it's there. Kettle gets excited, but asks the obvious question. Would a human even be allowed into an elven holy land? Normally, no. But with her introduction, it should be possible, and she'll tell him where it is. Elfo Sagrado is a dream place for anyone who studies elves. She explains that bringing a human near a place more precious than life is a huge gamble. No elf would usually do this. Even so, she wants to trust him. So she offers him a glowing red crystal, and Kettle accepts it as proof of their new bond. She warns that even if he reaches the place, the elven god may still test him. Still, she believes he'll pass. She wishes him luck, and Kettle thanks her. At last, she introduces herself as Marsilia Hazian Carusia, Queen of the Elves. That's right, the Queen. Kettle just answers with a sure grin. Kettle the Barbarian. Then he stomps down, cracks the ground, and blasts into the air like a rocket. His eyes glow as he shoots over the forest. He's moving so fast he's a blur, crossing the trees in an instant. From above, he looks like a comet tearing through the land with a huge shockwave. Meanwhile, at the edge of Varkan territory, a strong tremor shakes a fortress. The guards panic. They don't know what it is, only that something is coming fast. A huge object drops from the sky with a trail of smoke, heading straight for them. It lands hard, and a figure drops into a superhero pose through the dust. The guards freeze right away. They know exactly who just landed on them. Kettle casually greets them and says it's nice to meet them. The guards are stunned. They're all thinking, that crash we heard, was that him? One of them takes a closer look. Gray hair and that big scar on his chest. Then it clicks. Could this be the Ashen Barbarian? Kettle takes one small step and the guards instantly draw their swords. He raises both hands and tells them to relax. He's friendly. The lead guard doesn't buy it and demands to know what he wants. Kettle just points, not at them, but past them toward the castle wall. He says he'd like to visit their territory. The guards just blink, completely lost. Soon after, he's in an interrogation room. A guard asks if he only wants to pass through. Kettle says he'd like to stay a while if possible, then gives his name. The guard asks for identification, and of course Kettle has none. Then he remembers the crest Myul gave him. Back in the room, he sets it on the table and asks if this will do. He asks, and the guard is shocked. Kettle explains it's from House Akasha, which is apparently a big name. The guard recognizes it right away. A powerful merchant family from another kingdom. He's still doubtful though. It looks real, but checking it from another kingdom won't be easy. In the end, he agrees. But naturally, there's a catch. Kettle has to prove he isn't a threat. The test is simple. Join 3 strangers, make a party, and clear a dungeon. Kettle thinks that sounds way too easy, so he smiles and says sure. But there's more. Afterward, he has to report everything that happened. Kettle understands right away. It's a smart way to make the newcomers watch each other. The guard gets a little thrown off that he figured it out so fast. Are you really a barbarian? Kettle proudly says he is. That leaves the guard stunned. He thought barbarians were just dumb muscle, and he wraps things up fast after that. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, we meet the next member, Alessandro Tyrannus, a so-called paladin. He complains that entering a dungeon with some rat who steals from people's pockets is just sad. A thief named Kassan Hark hears that and fires back, asking if the old man is mad because another thief ripped him off. Tyrannus snaps and calls him a bastard, while Kassan just laughs and points at his worn-out armor, asking if he was ever a real paladin. He even says Tyrannus is just another loser like him, and now the paladin is boiling. Then Kassan goes too far when he mocks his name. That's enough. Tyrannus draws his sword. Kassan only grins and pulls a dagger coated with poison, asking if that armor can save him. Their weapons clash, but a third person steps between them, a nun of all people, asking them to stop. This is Hayes, a cleric, and she's already wondering how she's supposed to clear a dungeon with these 2 idiots. They still have one more party member coming, and she's already afraid of who it'll be. Right then, the door opens. The guard announces the last member has arrived, and a huge figure steps in with glowing purple eyes. What an entrance! The room goes still, stunned by how massive he is. Then Kettle breaks the silence with a big smile, asking if they're his new party. They're terrified. Tyrannus can only think that he's enormous. Hayes wonders if he is even human, and Kassan just feels the pressure. The guard leaves them there to get familiar. Totally unaware of the mood, Kettle happily starts introducing himself. He says, "Hi, I'm Kettle, I'm a barbarian." Then he looks at Kassan, who's sweating as he stammers that he's a thief. Next is the armored man, proudly declaring himself the paladin Alessandro Tyrannus. Kettle jumps on that right away and asks if he uses holy power. Tyrannus starts sweating and admits that normally he would, but he's a special kind of paladin, so he can't use it. Then the nun steps up nervously and introduces herself as Hayes, a cleric of Colosia. Kettle turns serious. A cleric, and people are still doubting who you are. Flustered, she explains her god is the god of lies and deceit, so people don't exactly trust her. Kettle just says he sees. Silence follows. A paladin with no holy power and a cleric tied to lies. What a group. Luckily, the guard returns and asks if everyone's ready to go. They trade looks and nobody seems happy about this. Hayes and Kassan look the most miserable, probably wondering what they did to deserve this. After a short walk, their hooded guide stops and says they've arrived. Kettle looks ahead, clearly a little surprised. The party reaches a forest clearing and finds the dungeon entrance. Kettle looks at Kassan and asks what the plan is, making him tense up right away. Kassan awkwardly calls him sir, but Kettle laughs and tells him to relax. They're teammates now. Trying to hide how nervous he is, Kassan explains a basic plan. The fighters go in front. The thief checks for traps and the cleric stays back to support. Kettle agrees right away, while Kassan already looks like he regrets coming. With that shaky plan in place, Kettle moves to the front and prepares to head in. The group enters the dungeon. Inside the cold, dark cave, Hayes quietly admits the darkness is creeping her out. Casson is more worried by something else. The complete lack of traps feels wrong. Then he notices danger ahead and quickly stops Kettle, warning him that monsters are nearby. Looking down, Kettle spots bones scattered across the ground. Casson instantly understands what's happening. This wasn't a simple trial. It was a trap meant to wipe them out. Kettle, though, just sounds curious. Skeletons? Casson explains they're tough opponents. Even if you cut them apart, they keep moving, and their bones are hardened by dungeon power. The danger just shot way up, so he starts giving orders, telling Hayes to prepare her support magic. He tells the warrior to hold the front and warns Kettle to get ready. Kettle calmly says he's ready, making it sound like Casson is some master strategist. Then Kettle steps forward, and that single step wakes one of the skeletons. He watches it with open surprise as the skeleton rises and rattles to life. The others panic and brace themselves as the skeleton warrior rushes Kettle with a huge sword raised to strike. But Kettle just swats it aside and throws one punch. That single hit completely shatters the skeleton. It drops into a sparkling pile of bone dust. The rest of the party can only stare in shock. Kettle smirks and says, "So destroying the head really works." Casson looks crushed. That wasn't what he meant at all. What Kettle did should have been impossible. Skeletons strengthened by dungeon mana aren't supposed to break that easily. You normally have to hack through them over and over. Casson knew Kettle was strong, but not like this. Now everyone is silently wondering if this monster of a man is even human. Kettle just cracks his knuckles and grins, ready to keep going. The others quickly hurry after him. He tells them they don't need to rush, but his terrified teammates immediately answer, "Yes, sir." At this point, they're all thinking the same thing. They do not want to die in here. A little later, Kettle suddenly stops with a puzzled look. His foot has hit something. The whole party freezes when they see another skull on the ground, and a second skeleton rises. The team watches in total horror. Round 2 has started, but instead of panicking, Kettle turns to them and asks for a favor. He wants to handle all of them alone. Apparently, he wants to test something. They agree immediately. Kettle thanks them, his purple eyes glowing as he walks toward the skeleton, while the others keep their distance. They can only watch and wonder what he's planning. He walks right up to it, studying the thing like he's trying to figure out how it works. The skeleton attacks, but Kettle catches the strike with 2 fingers, snaps the blade, and almost seems to ask what it will do now. That doesn't stop the creature. It lunges again for another attack, and instead of dodging, Kettle grabs its wrist. Smiling, he says, "Then how about this?" A sharp crunch follows as he crushes the skeleton's hand and lets it drop, watching with real interest. The skeleton pauses, almost confused by its own broken hand. Then it roars and swings its sword with the other arm. It even tosses the weapon and catches it in its good hand to keep fighting. Not bad for a pile of bones. Kettle is actually impressed and notes that it can switch hands. The skeleton charges again, but its attack gets stopped instantly when Kettle catches that wrist too and tears off the other hand, sending it stumbling back. Even then, it doesn't quit. This time it lunges with its own arm like a weapon. Kettle is amazed. It can use parts of its body as weapons, which means it's smarter than he expected. The sight is too much for the party, who look sick watching this. All they can do is stand there and shake, while Kettle tears through the monster like a true barbarian. Then with one brutal crack, he finishes it. Its skull drops and keeps moving on its own, which makes Kettle murmur that it's amusing. The thing can still move with only its head. A stomp ends it for good. Right after that, his whole mood shifts back to calm and friendly. He apologizes for the delay, and Kaysan, still scared out of his mind, quickly says it's no problem. Kettle accepts that and says it's time to move on, so they head out again. The rest of the party nervously agrees and follows. After a while, the group stops at the foot of a huge staircase. They've reached the second floor. The mood is heavy, and everyone looks worn out from the climb. Kaysan carefully asks if they can take a short break. To his huge relief, Kettle agrees. Kaysan could cry as the group drops down to rest. Kettle stays seated, quietly observing them. Then he breaks the silence, saying he has a question, and admitting he doesn't know much about this. Hayes, a little flustered, says wanting to learn is a good thing and asks what he wants to know. Kettle asks a smart question. Why is such a dangerous dungeon allowed to exist so close to a town? Hayes explains that monsters usually stay inside, and if any come out, they're dealt with fast. Kaysan adds that dungeons are a natural part of the world. They can appear as caves or giant towers, and for some reason, they tend to show up near crowded places. Hayes goes on, saying that when one appears, the local lord hires mercenaries like them to clear it. Kettle asks if that means dungeons never form inside towns, only some distance away, and Alessandro confirms it. That makes Kettle's eyes brighten. Then he asks the big question, is there a reward for clearing one? Hayes says yes, and for a dungeon this size, the boss should drop a pretty valuable reward. A dark smile crosses Kettle's face as he thinks it's just like a game. Hayes hears him, but he brushes it off as talking to himself and moves on. Then he asks something that stuns everyone. Who made the dungeons? Hayes says they're simply natural, but Kettle doesn't accept that so easily. He points out how they appear near towns almost like they're meant to lure people in with danger and treasure. For something called natural, it all feels too planned. That thought hits Hayes hard. She's stunned and admits she never questioned it before. Casson is shaken too. He always thought barbarians were dumb brutes, but Kettle's questions prove otherwise, and now he's starting to wonder if Kettle is anything like a normal barbarian. That train of thought ends when Kittle cheerfully asks if everyone is rested. Snapped out of their thoughts, the party quickly says they're ready to move. So they head deeper into the dungeon. Then Kittle suddenly stops and looks genuinely surprised. He's found a large treasure chest. Casson tells him it's a dungeon reward, if someone can open it. But a chest like this should need a skilled rogue. Then Kittle turns to Casson and simply asks if he can unlock it. Casson is speechless. Kittle's logic is simple, it's a treasure chest, and Casson is the rogue. He says this is exactly the rogue's job, but Casson starts sweating in panic. Inside, he's screaming if he really had the skill to open a chest like this, he wouldn't be stuck in some low-ranked dungeon. Casson is falling apart. He can't bring himself to tell Kittle the truth, not with that hopeful look on the big guy's face. His mind jumps to the worst case. Kittle's happy expression turns into a cold stare, as he calls him useless and crushes his skull. So Casson forces out a shaky laugh and says he'll try, even though he's panicking inside. As he kneels at the chest, Kittle leans in to watch with intense curiosity. Casson feels sure he's dead if he fails, so he desperately tries to remember the lock-picking tricks he saw real adventurers use back when he was just carrying their gear. With trembling hands, he starts working the lock. Kittle looms behind him, and Casson realizes this is it. His life depends on getting this one chance right. Casson is on the verge of breaking when click, the chest opens. Kittle looks over, confused by how hard Casson is shaking. Then Casson totally loses it and starts bawling. Through the tears, he chokes out that it opened. Hayes is stunned. She says only skilled thieves can do that and calls him amazing. Even Kittle looks impressed and praises Casson. Casson can barely believe it himself. He always thought he was trying his hardest, but now he starts wondering if he never really gave it everything before. The guy is having a full crisis. Kittle skips ahead and asks how much the treasure is worth. Hayes says it could let a family live like royalty for a month. Hearing that, Kittle grins and puts Casson in charge of the loot. Casson answers right away and reaches into the chest. He pulls out a gem-covered goblet worth more than anything he's ever touched. Then Kittle suddenly calls his name. Casson lets out a scream of pure shock and panic. Kittle has no clue what's wrong and asks if he needs help or got hurt. Casson frantically denies everything, and the rest of the party is completely lost. After that awkward moment, the group heads deeper into the cave. Then Casson suddenly tells everyone to stop. There are skeletons ahead. Kittle counts 4 skeletons and calmly says he'll take 3. The whole party freezes. He really said that. Then he tells them to handle the last one. Clearly excited, clutching the loot bag, Casson realizes this is an actual fight. Alessandra simply nods and says she understands. As soon as Kittle steps forward, the bones on the ground begin to move. With loud rattling, the skeletons piece themselves together. Casson watches in horror as all 4 rise, their eyes glowing with blue light before they let out a silent shriek. Kittle gives the signal. Battle starts now. Casson moves first, charging in with his blade ready. One skeleton is caught off guard, but before Casson can hit it, Kittle cuts in. He grabs 3 skeletons at once in a crushing bear hug and tells the others not to interfere. Those 3 are his. Left alone, the 4th skeleton brings its sword down, but Alessandro is waiting. He catches the strike on his shield with a loud clang. Casson jumps in right after. He vaults over it, daggers out and ready to hit, while Hayes' eyes light up as she casts Shadow of Confusion. Alessandro takes the opening and brings down his glowing sword in a heavy slash. The skeleton falls apart, but they still haven't destroyed its core, so it pulls itself back together and attacks again. Watching the team work, Kittle smiles. He says seeing a party use its core skills up close is impressive and pretty rare, then crushes the 3 skeletons in his arms with his bare hands. Once the bones dissolve, he says the obstacles are gone, so now he can enjoy the show. As the 3 of them get ready for round 2, they all realize the same thing. This barbarian is testing them. The last skeleton looks almost confused by how fired up they are. Hayes hardens her resolve, show weakness and you die. Alessandro rushes in with a fierce look, overwhelming the last enemy, as the whole team attacks at once. At last, the skull hits the floor, and with the fight over, the party drops down, breathing hard. Kittle studies his worn-out teammates and thinks back to the adventurers from the White Snowfield. They must have been strong after all, because this party struggled with even 1 skeleton. Then they move on to the next floor. There are more monsters, but with Kittle leading, they barely matter. Eventually, they reach the final floor. At the end of the hall sits a figure in black armor on a stone throne. It's a skeleton knight, and Hayes instantly starts shaking with fear. Kittle calmly asks if this skeleton is different from the others they fought. The answer is grim, yes. It's powerful, skilled with sword and shield, and on the level of a knight. They have no chance of winning. Terrified, Hayes can't imagine beating it. Kittle then asks what happens if they fail and retreat. Hayes says they'd need the territory's approval, but if the retreat is judged reasonable, it won't be a problem. Kittle gives a slight smile and says that sounds reasonable. Meanwhile, the skeleton knight stays seated, giving off a heavy, dangerous presence. At the deepest part of the dungeon, the final boss waits, a skeleton knight with a purple aura. It rises, ready to fight Kittle. He only smirks, amused that a skeleton can keep its shape like this. The knight doesn't hesitate. It lifts its huge sword to crush him. In the next instant, it leaps up and fires a massive energy wave. Hayes throws up a golden barrier, but it can't hold. It shatters, and Alessandro steps in with his shield to protect the party. Even so, the whole group is blasted back. They're completely outmatched. For a brief moment, even Kittle looks surprised. Alessandro can hardly believe how much power was packed into that one attack. Seeing them as nothing, the knight charges in to finish the fight. This time, Kettle moves. He meets the attack with one brutal punch, sending a shockwave through the dungeon. The knight is blasted away and wiped out in one hit. The others can only stare, their minds going blank. Kettle casually brushes off his hands and asks if that was all. After that single punch ended everything, the party spots the real reward, a large treasure chest. Kettle turns to Castron and tells him to open it. Castron panics at once. The lock is far beyond his level. When Castron says they'll have to leave it, Kettle simply punches the chest open. Castron and the others are left speechless all over again. Kettle just smiles, says this way is better, and tells Castron to collect the loot. Castron is too stunned to even process why Kettle asked first if he could have smashed it all along. With the dungeon cleared, the party comes back out of the cave, and then the entrance behind them collapses. Castron explains that a perfect clear makes the dungeon vanish, which means there was no secret room after all. That only makes Kettle grin. He says that would have been fun too. At the city gate, the guard is shocked to see them back so soon. Expecting the worst, he asks how it went. Kettle gives him a bright thumbs up and says it was satisfying. The guard starts the normal entry check, interviewing each party member alone. He asks Hayes whether the Barbarian should be allowed to stay, and after a pause, she says yes. This is the guard's real job, to screen out dangerous people. But both Castron and Alessandro back Kettle up. They say that despite his insane strength, he never harmed them. The guard realizes Kettle isn't some ordinary barbarian. When Kettle is questioned, he only praises his teammates and calls them dependable. That's unusual for the guard, since forcing strangers into a party almost never ends this well. Convinced, he lets Kettle into the city, though he warns him not to cause trouble. Then he gives them the dungeon reward, a heavy bag of gold. Normally the guards would keep the loot, but this time he hands it to them. Kettle gladly takes it and says they'll split it evenly 4 ways. The others try to refuse because they know they barely helped, but Kettle insists it has to be shared. With that settled, he happily suggests they celebrate with a drink. The other 3 force awkward smiles and agree to go with him. The second he's out of earshot, they're nearly crying and begging to be freed from this nightmare. Watching them leave, the guard thinks over what he saw. A barbarian who dropped a skeleton knight in 1 hit. He's absurdly strong, at least knight level, maybe beyond. This isn't just some barbarian. He's a legendary one, something outside the norm. After deciding that, the guard knows this is far above him and needs to report it to his lord. Later that night, at a grand estate, a powerful man writes by candlelight. A knock breaks the silence, and a voice from the throne tells the visitor to enter. The city guard steps inside, approaches the throne, and addresses the man as his lord. Luke Barkin, ruler of the domain, looks up from his work and asks what this is about. The captain of the guard stands straight and gets to the point. A barbarian has entered the domain. Luke Barkin answers sharply. Did you permit him to stay? Sweating, the captain explains that he judged it wouldn't cause a major problem. Luke Barkin isn't satisfied and demands to know what the real issue is. The captain finally admits it. The man is incredibly strong enough to threaten a kingdom. Now Barkin is interested. He leans forward and asks how strong. The answer is wild. This barbarian killed a skeleton knight in 1 hit. That shocks Barkin, because a skeleton knight is no small threat. It normally takes a full team of pros to bring one down, and this man ended it instantly. Still, hearing it's a barbarian, Barkin clearly struggles to believe it, so he presses the captain. Was this brute really a top-class warrior? The captain says probably yes, maybe even higher, still drenched in sweat. Now this is a ruler's worst case. An unknown powerhouse is roaming his land. Barkin decides to face it head-on and says, bring him in. The captain nearly panics, asking if he's really sure. Still, Barkin has a point. Letting someone that dangerous walk around unchecked is asking for trouble, so he wants to judge him himself. The captain warns it's risky, but Barkin only smiles and motions behind his throne. No need to worry, he has insurance. He turns to his Shadow Knight and asks what he thinks. The knight balls up his fist, full of pride. To him, Hansu is just a barbarian, an uneducated brute who got lucky. After training under great sword masters, he sees him as nothing but an insect. That answer is enough for Barkin. He gives the order to bring him to him and says he'll deal with it. Meanwhile, the so-called brute is him, and he's busy tearing through an all-you-can-eat feast. His new party can only watch in silent horror. Hansu, totally unaware, slams down his mug and happily says the food is amazing, his treat, so they should eat up. They answer with painfully fake laughter. Then he puts Alessandra on the spot, asking if he's a holy knight. If so, where was that holy power in the dungeon? Alessandra starts sweating again and explains he was still training, so his holy power hasn't awakened yet. Hansu bluntly says that's a shame. Subtlety is not his thing. Then he turns to Hayes and asks if she worships Colossia, and whether there's a temple nearby. Hayes awkwardly explains that her goddess rules over lies and deceit, so there aren't exactly many temples. She quickly changes the topic and asks the real question. Just how strong is he? The other two perk up at once, and Hansu only stares back with a chicken bone hanging from his mouth. He says he has no idea since he just got here, then asks how strong a skeleton knight even is. Hayes explains that a second-rate warrior can barely handle one, while a first-rate fighter could maybe win like he did. He casually asks if that only counts as second-rate. Then a shaky voice cuts in. Excuse me, it's the owner, nervously saying they're closing. He clearly wants this monster out of his shop. Hansu cheerfully agrees and asks if anyone wants to meet up again later. The other three, in perfect sync, blurt out excuses and practically run for it. Hansu waves them off with a friendly, see you next time. Meanwhile, all three are probably praying they never see him again. Once he's finally alone, he gets a room and drops onto the bed. To him, this feels luxurious. He's just glad the dungeon reward was enough to pay for it. After surviving in the snow, even a rough bed feels amazing. Then he starts thinking about what comes next. He's out of the wild now and wants to enjoy the world. His goals are simple adventurer dreams. Visit the Elf Kingdom, see the Magic Tower, and check out the capital, all the famous places. He falls asleep thinking about them, then wakes the next morning to pounding on his door. He drags himself up, opens it, and finds the same nervous guard captain from the castle. Hansu opens the door shirtless and just grunts, "What?" The poor captain nearly jumps out of his skin, then forces himself to deliver the message. The Lord wants to see him, so the ruler of the whole territory wants a private talk with him. Naturally, he grins and agrees right away. He just wants to grab a shirt, while the guard keeps sweating. Sure, this has to mean trouble. As they walk through town, Hansu takes everything in with excitement. He only saw the place at night before, so this is his first real look in daylight. He flashes the uneasy guard a big grin and thumbs up, clearly loving the fantasy city vibe. The captain looks like he wants to vanish. He decides to just finish the trip and avoid looking at him any more than he has to. At last they reach the hall. The captain announces that he's brought the Barbarian, and the doors open as Barkin calls them in. Hansu steps forward like he's getting the full VIP treatment. Barkin reaches out his hand, introducing himself as Luke Barkin, Lord of this land, and he actually shakes it, then gives a slight bow before properly introducing himself. That nearly breaks Barkin's brain. A barbarian bowing makes no sense to him. In his mind, barbarians never lower their heads. He expected a savage, not someone polite. Trying not to show it, Barkin comments that Hansu has some manners after all, then invites him to sit. He looks around, impressed by the fancy room, but then notices something else. A knight in full armor is standing there. That instantly grabs Hansu's attention. He's thrilled to see a real fantasy knight up close. The knight notices his stare and mistakes it for bloodlust. He can't believe he would show that much hostility in front of his lord. Furious, the knight reaches for his sword at once. Before it turns ugly, Barkin cuts in and says he only has a few questions. Hansu calmly sips his tea and tells him to ask whatever he wants. Barkin starts with the biggest one. Where did he come from? He smiles and answers in a roundabout way. The coldest place. A world buried in white. That shocks both Barkin and the knight. He's talking about the legendary white snowfield. Now Barkin is sure he's sitting across from the Barbarian of legend. He admits it's hard to believe, but Hansu just tells him to believe it or not. That's his choice. So Barkin changes direction. Instead, he asks how strong he is, really trying to figure out whether he'll become a threat. Hansu says that's the wrong question because he doesn't even know this world's power scale. Barkin and the knight exchange a look. Then Barkin offers a simple test, a spar with his knight, with a reward for taking part. He lights up at that. Barkin quickly adds that it won't be to the death. He grins and agrees. The quick answer surprises Barkin, but Hansu is genuinely excited. He gets to fight a real knight with special powers. Barkin tightens his fist, thinking that a barbarian really is simple. Offer a fight and he'll bite. Soon they're in a huge arena with Barkin watching from above. Below, Hansu and the knight face each other. The knight is all business. While he looks thrilled, Barkin gives the signal to begin and tells them not to kill each other. At the bell, the knight draws his sword and declares that Hansu should be honored to witness his technique. He says he'd like that too, which only makes the knight angrier. He takes it as disrespect and decides to crush him with a clear show of their difference. A huge green aura bursts from him. Then he asks what he will do, swings hard, and sends 3 giant blades of energy flying straight at him. Hansu stares up, confused. There are 3 of them. At first he thinks it might be a trick, but all 3 glowing swords are real, so this is what they call swordsmanship, Hansu thinks. The knight grows even more smug and mocks him, saying all he can do is dodge. But just before the finishing blow, he casually flicks a finger and the sword shatters on the spot. The knight freezes. Before he can react, he raises a hand and breaks the attack in an instant. Then he closes the gap in a flash and grabs the knight by the chest plate, crushing the armor like paper. With one brutal throw, he sends the fully armored knight flying across the arena. Watching from above, Luke Barkin is completely stunned. The knight crashes down in a huge crater after taking just 1 hit. Barkin can hardly understand that kind of strength. Hansu smiles like it was nothing and asks if they're finished. Barkin needs a second to gather himself before quietly saying yes. In his head, he's already calculating. One-shotting a first-class knight is beyond abnormal. A barbarian this strong could shake the whole world. So Barkin decides to contact one person in particular, the sword master. He wonders whether that man has arrived yet and if this news would interest him. Right then, a voice answers from nowhere, asking if he means his interest. A window opens and an old man in a green robe appears. Barkin eyes him and says his habits are still strange as ever. The old man just laughs it off, saying everyone needs some entertainment. This is Swordmaster Kane, and he wants to hear about the matter himself. Barkin immediately stands and bows. That alone shows how important the man is. After that, we cut to the knight recovering in bed. He's clearly not feeling great about what happened. Then the door opens and Barkin comes in to check on him. The knight jerks awake and starts apologizing again and again for how badly he failed. Kane cuts him off. Don't apologize to him, apologize to me. Then the twist hits. He's the knight's master. Kane points out the strange part. The armor was crushed, but the man inside wasn't hurt at all. That tells him the barbarian wasn't some wild brute. He held back with crazy control just to spare the knight. That kind of precision puts him far beyond an ordinary knight, at least superhuman. Hearing that, both Barkin and the knight look like they've seen a ghost. Barkin asks how that barbarian stacks up against Kane, and he just snorts. He's a swordmaster. Raw muscle alone means nothing to him. But Barkin brings up one odd thing. Kettle had all that strength, yet not even a hint of aura. Barkin says that's why he thinks Kettle came from the feared white snowfield. That makes Kane pause. He's heard stories about what lives there, or maybe who lives there. Could Kettle be a heteromorph, something not fully human? A creature moving through the world in plain sight? Kane soon rejects that idea. If he were a real monster, the knight would have been turned into red mist in an instant. Still, one question remains. Why would someone from the edge of the world come here now? Kane brushes it off and mutters something vague about the Emperor and his strange requests. He tells Barkin not to worry about it. Then his attention shifts. So is this barbarian still here? Barkin says yes. Kane decides to see this mystery man himself. Meanwhile, Ketel is outside talking with a guard, totally unaware. The guard asks what he'll do next. He already got the reward money, and Barkin said he's free to act as he wants here. Ketel figures getting an official ID should come first, since it would make travel easier. The guard gives him two choices. Find an important sponsor to back him or join the mercenaries. If he builds up enough merit there, the guild can officially confirm who he is. Still, most beginner mercs just run errands. For someone as strong as Ketel, the guard thinks getting a sponsor makes way more sense. Did Ketel care? Not at all. The second he hears about mercenaries taking quests and hunting monsters he's sold, grinning ear to ear, he asks where to sign up. The guard freezes for a second, then says there's a guild hall nearby. Take me there, Ketel says, flashing a huge bright smile. The guard folds instantly. But mercenary life isn't some heroic dream, it's the bottom of the ladder. Even strong adventurers die in dungeons or end up doing nobles' dirty jobs, so the lowest rank of mercenary life is rough, dirty, and loud. At the guild hall, a brawl is already breaking out. The other mercs aren't stopping it, they're just standing around and betting on it. At the front desk, a pink-haired receptionist asks her coworker how today's new recruits are looking. Rosa, the blonde one, lets out a tired sigh. They're all freaks. This batch includes a fallen holy knight, a suspicious thief, and a nun devoted to some shady god. Her friend looks disappointed, and Rosa complains that no normal people ever come in. The mercs they already have only wreck the place. She starts wishing some prince would show up and save her. Then the door opens. Rosa looks up and sees a giant figure towering over the desk. So much for the prince. It's Kato, smiling as he takes in the mess. So this is the guild hall. The fight stops at once, and the room goes silent. Everyone just stares in shock. A barbarian? Kato, not noticing the panic at all, plants his hands on the desk and says he's here to become a mercenary. Rosa can barely get her words out as she asks why he'd even want that. He says he needs official status. She tells him that's possible, but it'll take a lot of work to earn it. Registration costs 5 silver. He gives his name, then admits he doesn't know his age. Rosa just picks one and writes it down. A moment later, she finishes the process and hands over his mercenary badge. Kettle takes it and immediately says to sign him up. He wants a job right now, so she shows him the few quests a beginner can take. He stares at the list, confused. That's it? The F-rank jobs are all chores. Gathering herbs, cleaning basements, cleaning sewers. Not exactly monster hunting. Rosa gets nervous. Barbarians are supposed to be proud, so these jobs might set him off. While she starts explaining how ranking works, Kettle taps the list. He wants this one. Rosa blinks. He chose herb gathering, the most basic job possible. She asks if he's sure. Kettle folds his arms and says if it needs doing, then there's no issue. Then he asks where to find the herbs. Rosa says they're outside the village and gives him a sketch of the plant. He smiles, takes the card, and says he'll be back soon. After he leaves, Rosa just sits there stunned. What was that? He's way too calm. Her pink-haired friend has to shake her out of it. Out in the forest, Kettle finds the plants and checks them against the drawing. Looks right. He wonders if they're used for healing since they look a little odd. Then he gets to work, joking that with his UV gear on, he's ready for his first mission. About an hour later, he's back. Thump, an oversized sack of herbs lands on the desk, making Rosa jump. Cheerfully, he asks if this will be enough. Rosa starts wondering if he cleared out the whole field, but when she checks them, she's stunned. Every herb is in perfect shape. She says most mercs just yank them out carelessly. Kettle smirks despite how he looks. He's got a very gentle hand. So she pays him for the job, 1 silver coin. That's barely enough for the cheapest meal in town. Even so, Kettle feels proud. It's the first money he's ever made through honest work. That alone means a lot to him. He tells Rosa he's happy with it, and asks for another quest right away, leaving her baffled. She can't figure it out. This huge, scary barbarian is thrilled to pick flowers. Rosa is completely thrown off. At this point, she's sure the new mercenary is weird too. After gathering herbs, cleaning a basement, and crawling through the sewers, Kettle keeps going. His next F-rank pick is warehouse cleaning. Rosa is on the verge of losing it. After the herb job, this makes 3 cleaning quests in a row. Watching this giant man grin over chores, she starts to wonder if he actually enjoys cleaning. Forcing a stiff customer service smile, she stamps the request and sends him off. Soon, Kettle reaches the warehouse, ready to start. The owner is waiting for him, likely expecting some skinny kid after a few coins. Instead, Kettle shows up smiling and says he's here to clean the warehouse. The poor woman nearly faints. Her face says pure panic. He asks if she's the owner, and she barely manages a yes. All she can think is barbarian, but he turns out to be perfect for the work. Heavy crates are nothing to him. Next comes street sweeping. At first, handling that much strength was tricky, but he gets used to it. What Kettle doesn't know is that someone is watching. From a window, Swordmaster Kane stares through binoculars, completely confused. Kane can't believe it. Kettle has enough power to shake a kingdom any country would want him, and he's using that power to sweep trash off the road. Worse, he's taking it completely seriously. Kane has no words. Meanwhile, Kettle wipes his brow, fully enjoying the reward of a hard day's work. The next day, he wakes up sore, but he feels great. He gets up and notices a small pouch by the table, remembering Rosa handing him his pay after day 1 and praising him for finishing all 15 requests. 15 silver coins in one pouch. To him, it feels like a fortune. He'd thanked her with a huge grin and promised to come back tomorrow. That memory still makes him smile. Time for day 2 in civilization. The next morning, Kettle walks through town, ignoring the nervous looks from the villagers. He's moving like a man proud of his first paycheck when he suddenly stops. His eyes lift with interest. Is that a library? He heads inside and the librarian turns to greet him. Then she lets out a scream. The huge barbarian is politely asking if he can read some books. Later, once things calm down, Kettle sits quietly, absorbed in a book. The librarian just stares from her desk, unable to process it. Outside, Kane is spying again and he's just as shocked. The barbarian is reading in a library. He starts wondering if Snowfield barbarians are secretly refined or if this one is simply very strange. Kettle finishes a history book and sums it up simply. The Empire won. He remembers Mylena saying she was heading to the kingdom that fought that empire, so now he knows what became of it. The book says the empire is now a major power and has basically turned the kingdom of Barkin into a puppet. It has already taken over half the human world and is still pushing farther. Kettle sits for a bit thinking about how crazy world domination even is. Then he drops the human history stuff and opens the book he really wanted. Non-human races. Right away, he's thrilled to learn those legendary fantasy beings are actually real here. It talks about amazing places like a dwarven cavern packed with rare minerals and treasure. There's also a fairy village, a city of celestials in the sky, and the hidden elven sanctuary, Elfo Sagrada. The book says Elfo Sagrada is a sacred land no one has ever found. Kettle just smirks and figures maybe he's special enough to visit it. But when he turns the page, his mood shifts fast. Wait, are there more places like the White Snowfield? He's reached the section on demon realms, lands humans can't enter, full of twisted monsters. There are 5 of them. The list includes the Forest of Silence, the Fiery Abyss, the Deep Sea, and the Deep Hole. Sounds lovely. Then comes the 5th one, the White Snowfield, his own home. According to the book, these realms have terrifying creatures, but they still can't spread their power into human lands. Kettle is stunned. Just how huge is this world? The White Snowfield already felt endless, and there are other places just like it. Once he's learned enough, he stacks the books neatly and stands, making the librarian jump again. On the way out, he gives her a kind smile and thanks her for the helpful books. With one last polite smile, Kettle leaves as the bell rings behind him. He heads straight to the mercenary guild and asks a startled Rosa if she has more work. The second she hands him a new quest form, his face lights up. He really loves grinding jobs. From the shadows, Swordmaster Kane is still watching. After 2 days of this, he's decided one thing: this guy is seriously weird. Now it's time to meet him. That night, Kettle walks through town feeling good about the day's work. He checks his coin pouch. Even the small jobs are starting to pay pretty well. At this rate, he figures he'll be a known mercenary before long. At the same time, someone watches him from a dark alley. The figure steps out and blocks his path. Kettle stops and turns with a puzzled look. It's the old man from before, Swordmaster Kane, looking grim beneath his hood. Kettle stays calm and points out that he's been following him all day. Kane freezes. The master of stealth just got exposed. Kettle folds his arms and asks what he wants, while Kane is stuck on one thought. You noticed me? He's sure he hid his presence perfectly with aura. No one should have sensed him. Seeing the cloaked stranger stay quiet, Kettle jumps to a conclusion. He cracks his knuckles and asks if he's a bandit. Kane can only stare, completely baffled. Since he doesn't answer, Kettle takes that as proof. Guess even nice towns have bandits. Kane starts to deny it, then hesitates. Would this kid even believe he's a famous swordmaster? Instead, Kettle looks at him with pity and asks if things are so bad he had to start robbing people in his old age. Then Kettle gets a great idea. Catching a bandit would look amazing on his mercenary record. Kane just stares, wondering how this conversation got so far off track. Then he has an idea of his own. If Kettle thinks he's a bandit, this is the perfect chance to test him. But the moment he decides, Kettle disappears right in front of him, just gone. Kane whips around in shock, and in the next instant, Kettle appears behind him. His eyes glow as he reaches for Kane. Realizing he's about to get grabbed, Kane blasts out green energy to block the attack. Kettle stops, then grins wide. Not bad, old man. You're pretty quick. Kane lands a short distance away, his mind spinning. He can't believe it. Kettle almost caught him, and he moved that fast with raw physical power alone. Kane didn't sense any aura at all. Meanwhile, Kettle just stands there smiling like none of this is a big deal. Kane clenches his teeth. This isn't a test anymore. He's going all out. But again, in an instant, Kettle vanishes. He's way too fast. Before Kane can react, Kettle has already grabbed his arm. The Swordmaster is stunned. Even with all his senses sharpened, he couldn't respond in time. The grip is crushing, like his arm is stuck in solid rock, and his whole body gets dragged along. As he struggles, Kane realizes he can't even match Kettle in strength. The gap is absurd, so he decides to unleash his full power. Kettle notices light gathering in Kane's hand just before the Swordmaster releases a huge wave of energy. The blast erupts in a blinding flash that forces even Kane backward. He lands, breathing hard, his hand still sparking. Kettle is totally fine and says bandits these days have all kinds of tricks. Kane is furious. Why does this idiot keep calling him a bandit? He's seething. That was mana materialization, a technique for elite fighters, and Kettle treats it like some cheap move. But Kettle only stares back with a huge, impressed grin. That leaves Kane speechless. His attack could tear through steel, yet Kettle doesn't have a scratch. Kane stares at his ridiculous body, trying to understand how bare skin took that hit. Kettle steps forward and says it's time to finish this. At that, Kane finally reaches for his sword. But before he can grab the hilt, Kettle's finger stops the draw. Kane's eyes nearly burst from shock. This should be impossible. He pushes with everything he has, but he can't beat the pressure of one finger. Then he looks up and sees Kettle's eyes glowing purple again. A tear of despair runs down Kane's face. He thinks this is the end, and one clean chop knocks him out. Holding the unconscious Swordmaster up, Kettle figures this must be what a fantasy world bandit looks like. A few minutes later, he arrives at the guardhouse, dragging Kane along. The guard stammers, asking what this is supposed to mean. He can barely process it. Did this random barbarian really beat a superhuman by himself? Kettle simply announces that he caught a thief. The guard is too shocked to hide it, and Kettle asks if turning him in counts toward his mercenary quest. The guard's brain basically stops working. That's Swordmaster Kane, a living legend, and Kettle is carrying him around like dirty laundry. At last, the guard blurts out that he's not a thief. Kettle's mind jumps right away. So you know him? If he's not the thief, then you must be helping him. Panicking, the guard straightens up and bows to the unconscious man, greeting Swordmaster Kane of the Gehentra Kingdom. You can almost hear the one gear in Kettle's head start turning. He looks down at Kane, confused. A guy called Swordmaster is a normal thief? No way. He doesn't buy it. Kettle insists Kane attacked him for his silver. The guard practically begs him to believe it, saying he'd never mistake that face. While the guard tries to explain, Kettle reaches his own wild conclusion. Maybe Swordmaster is just a cool title for thieves. The guard can only stare, wondering what nonsense he's hearing. After a long, awkward pause, he decides this is way above his pay grade, so he reports it to the Lord. Sometime later, Lord Luke Barkin is losing his mind. What? Lord Kane was defeated? Then comes a painfully awkward apology session. It's a back and forth of my mistake, and no, it was mine. After that, both of them sit in silence so awkward it hurts. From the doorway, Lord Barkin tries to make sense of everything. He expected a clash, sure, but not Kane getting completely crushed. The answer is simple and scary. This barbarian is stronger than a Swordmaster. Even if Kane is the newest one, that title still means a lot. Beating him makes Kettle a dangerous unknown, and Lord Barkin wants no part of this headache. He says there's been a misunderstanding, and leaves them to talk in private. Once the door closes, the room falls right back into awkward silence. The secondhand embarrassment is brutal as Kane takes a shaky sip of tea, his pride completely crushed after that beating. Trying to recover, he formally introduces himself again as Kane the Swordmaster. Kettle, being Kettle, asks if Swordmaster is his last name. Kane explains that when someone reaches that level, they don't need a surname. Kettle nods, then asks about the strange energy attack from earlier. He wants to know if it's a special skill. Kane casually shows the green energy in his hand and asks if he means this. Right away, Kettle's eyes shine. He admits he first thought it was a dumb little trick, but now that he knows it's a Swordmaster move, he thinks it's awesome. Kane explains that it's called aura, a form of basic energy known as mystic. Now Kettle finally realizes that thing before was aura, like a kid on Christmas. He immediately asks how he can learn it too. Kane explains that mystic is the raw source of power. Swordsmen turn it into aura, while mages use it as mana. Kettle gives a sly grin. So anyone can learn mystic? Can you teach me? Kane goes silent, and Kettle leans in with a smile, asking him to please teach him. In the end, Kane agrees. Still, he doesn't get it. Why ask for his help when Kettle is clearly stronger? Kettle admits he really knows nothing. He's just been fighting on instinct this whole time. That answer brings Kane's spirit right back. This is his chance. He can train the barbarian and win back some of his lost pride. He straightens up and declares, very well. A Swordmaster will teach him. A Swordmaster is nothing without his blade. Without it, I'm only half a man. KT nods and goes, that makes sense. No wonder you seemed weak, you didn't have your sword. Kane dies inside all over again. And KT keeps making it worse, saying he did think it was strange. If Kane had used his sword, maybe he would have won. KT smiles like he's being nice, completely unaware. Meanwhile, Kane is falling apart inside as his pride gets crushed again. Still trying to hold himself together, Swordmaster Kane starts the lesson. He explains that real swordsmanship isn't just swinging a blade, it's using aura with it. According to Kane, his style can turn illusion into reality. To test him, Kane asks what KT saw when he fought his disciple. KT immediately brings up the sword, splitting into 3 real attacks. So that's materialization, KT says, catching on right away. Even figures out it's a style built on skill and precision, not raw force. Kane confirms it, through gritted teeth. Kane straightens up and says a true swordmaster must combine the sword with aura. Then he shows it, pouring energy into his blade until it glows bright green. KT lights up. Oh, so that's aura. Flustered, Kane can only answer, yes. Kane still can't believe he's teaching this to a barbarian, so he decides showing it will work better than explaining. "I'll demonstrate," he says, taking his stance. He focuses completely, ready to prove himself. Then he swings down with all his power, sending out a spread of green slashes across the hall, ripping up the floor. KT watches closely without flinching. He notices the strike split into 5 parts. When the dust settles, Kane explains that many people can make illusions with aura, but only his swordsmanship can give them real form. Looking proud, he asks what KT thinks. KT answers with the most brutal, simple line possible. "I think I can do that too." Kane instantly calls that nonsense. Inside, he's losing his mind over how long it took him to master this art. KT cuts him off and says it'll be faster to just show him. Then he picks up a huge battle axe, leaving Kane staring in confusion. An axe? KT plants his feet and swings, moving the giant weapon so fast it leaves several clear after images. Kane goes silent. Then the awful truth hits him. KT did it with speed and brute force alone. KT brings the axe down and a huge shockwave carves through the hall in a blazing blast. Kane can only stare in pure shock while smoke rises from KT's axe. With a smug little smile, KT asks, "What do you think?" He knows exactly what he just did. Kane tries to make sense of it. It looked like illusion turned real, but it was only insane speed and strength. Even he was almost fooled. He says it was just a basic swing, but KT fires back. If the result is the same in a real fight, does the technique really matter? That leaves Kane speechless. He knows KT has a point and it hits his pride hard. Not willing to accept that, Kane snaps, "Then what about this?" In a flash of green aura, he creates several solid clones of himself. This time, KT is truly surprised. It looks like Kane split his own body apart. Kane and the clones attack at once, their combined strike blasting a huge smoking crater into the floor. Kane proudly says this move comes from perfect control of aura. Then he challenges KT to copy it. Cattell doesn't answer. He just braces himself and lifts the giant axe again. He starts spinning faster and faster, turning into a whirlwind of pure destruction. This is bad for Kane. The spin keeps building, making a tornado inside the hall that rips stone from the walls. When it finally stops, Cattell stands calmly in the middle of the wreckage and asks, "What do you think?" That breaks Kane for good. He drops down, shaking and crying that his life's work means nothing. He's done. The great sword master is reduced to a sobbing mess on the floor. Cattell looks down and says his mental toughness is weaker than expected. Then, switching gears, he gives Kane a real compliment. "Your swordsmanship is amazing." Cattell admits all he did was swing his axe fast. That isn't true swordsmanship, just brute force. Kane's technique was different. Those weren't fake after images, they were real. And Cattell says he could never reach that kind of mystery. That tiny bit of praise is enough to revive Kane. His swordsmanship still has value. He declares that making illusion and reality one is a special art only he can use. Just like that, his ego is back. With fire in his eyes, he realizes this isn't a flaw in his style. Cattell is simply abnormal. After all, no normal person could move fast enough to fake that effect without aura. Once Kane settles down, Cattell asks again if he can teach him real sword techniques. Kane quickly regains his composure and apologizes for getting emotional. With most of his pride restored, he finally starts the lesson for real. He says that to control aura, you first have to awaken to mystery. No swordsman or mage can reach the top without it unless they're a cleric borrowing power straight from the gods. Cattell asks if divine power is different from this. Kane says yes. A cleric's power is granted by the gods, not drawn from their own ability. Cattell listens with real interest. Kane goes on to explain that mystery is the hidden power inside every person. How you use it shapes everything, whether it becomes aura, mana, or spirit power. Awakening it is the first big step. Then he reveals there are 5 stages to mastering mystery, and the first is called sensing mystery. Cattell asks if anyone can do it, but Kane says no. Without talent, you can't even feel it. He adds that people who can barely sense it are only considered third-rate. Based on how well someone controls mystery, everyone is placed into one of 5 ranks. Those ranks are third-rate, second-rate, first-rate, superhuman, and finally hero class. Hearing that, Cattell seems to remember something from his past. Kane brushes it off, saying the ranks are only rough guides and not to worry about them yet. After the explanation, Cattell says he understands, and Kane declares it's time for practice. He watches closely, ready to guide Cattell through the first step, sensing mystery. Kane tells him to awaken a sense he's never used before. The instructions are simple. Feel the wind, feel the earth. Cattell focuses as hard as he can, then opens his eyes and admits he feels nothing. Kane is stunned. He thought someone that strong would pick it up easily. He mutters that powerful people are usually better at this, but Cattell seems to be the exception. Cattell says no one from his snowy homeland has ever sensed this kind of power. So Kane moves to plan B, and decides to jumpstart it by sending his own energy into Cattell's body. Cattell lights up. "You're transferring aura?" Kane gives him a vague, something like that. Looking amazed, Cattell agrees he's only read about this in books. Kane puts a hand on his back and tells him to relax and feel the flow. But the moment he touches him, Kane gets hit by a huge shock. What kind of body is this? It feels like touching solid stone, and Kane starts wondering if Kale is even human. Kale calls out to him and Kane awkwardly apologizes for zoning out. Then he gets serious and starts pouring aura in, hoping to awaken Kale's hidden power. Green energy flows into him and Kane is sure this should work. But something is wrong. Kane stops, completely confused. He can't find the path. He can't even get far enough to search for it. To him, it's like trying to find anything inside a huge empty void. In the end, he has to give up. This is a dead end, so Cain pulls back. Cato immediately panics. What do you mean it won't work? Do I have no talent? Cain tells him it isn't about talent. Cato has to find the path on his own to awaken his power. Cato understands, but he's still worried. So are you saying I can't sense mystery at all? Cain struggles to answer. He couldn't even check Cato's potential because his body is too unusual. It's so unbelievably dense that it acts like armor, blocking the aura from getting in. Cain admits he's never seen anything like it. His raw physical power is basically shutting out magic. Cato slumps disappointed, so he can't gain mystical power. Cain says he doesn't know for sure. He suggests asking other sword masters or maybe the mages at the magic tower. Cain apologizes, but Cato brushes it off and says it's fine. There may still be a chance. Then he breaks into a big grin, thanking Cain sincerely for all his help. Cain watches him and thinks about the other barbarians he's known, violent beasts who only cared about fighting. But Cato is different, so Cain asks if he'd stay in the kingdom. He offers loyalty, a title, and a high position. Cato answers plainly, I refuse. I don't plan to belong to anyone. Cain had hoped that winning this barbarian's loyalty might help free them from the empire, so he tries once more by offering him nobility. Cato just smiles, unmoved by the deal. He'll live his own way. Cain is surprised, but then he seems to understand. He understands. Cato gives him one last sincere thanks and says he won't forget this. Then Cato heads off. Watching him leave, Cain realizes trying to make him submit was foolish. No one is going to own a man like that. He moves only by his own choice, and that mystery may make him more dangerous than any barbarian Cain has known. With a sigh, Cain's mind turns to the Emperor and his obsession with reaching the demon realm. Not long after, Lord Barkin sits at his desk, already aware of the Emperor's goal. Cain reports that lives are being wasted, and guesses the Emperor wants to become like some ruler from the past. Still, he sets that thought aside for now. He goes on to say the Empire hasn't even taken all human lands yet, so this plan is reckless. Barkin understands right away the Emperor will eventually turn his eyes on them too. Cain agrees. Their territory is still counted as part of the Empire, so an order could arrive at any moment. Leaning back, Cain grumbles about the state of the world and the Emperor's madness. Then Barkin's tone changes. He leans in and asks about a rumor. Cain says it's true. Demon activity is getting easier to spot. Dungeons are showing up more often, and rumors say something is leaking out of the demon realm. Whatever it is, it won't end well for anyone. Then Cain adds that Kettle being here at the same time feels strange too. Barkin agrees that is a fair point. Cain asks what he thinks, but Barkin can only admit he doesn't know. At least Kettle hasn't shown any hostility toward them. Other than that, he's a complete mystery. Meanwhile, that mystery himself is out walking around town when he starts feeling that something's off. People keep moving out of his path, even pulling their children away from him. And Kettle's big guess? It must be his clothes. Yep, he decides his beast hide vest probably looks too uncivilized, so he makes up his mind. It's time for new clothes. After a while, he finds a very upscale tailor shop. Nothing bad could come from this, right? The tailor turns around and nearly faints. A barbarian is standing in his fancy shop. Fighting back tears, the man says they don't carry anything Kettle's size. But when he sees Kettle's letdown, he quickly offers to make something custom. That instantly cheers Kettle up, and he happily tells him to do it. The tailor agrees, but inside he's imagining every possible way this giant could kill him if the outfit goes wrong. Later on the way to the guild, something on the ground catches Kettle's eye. It's a small blue orb with a faint glow. So yes, side quest time. He studies it more closely, drawn in by the strange pattern moving inside. Figuring the guild might know something, he picks up the odd item and takes it with him. At the guild, he shows the orb to Rosa and asks if she knows what it is. He sets it in her hand and says he found it in the street. Rosa checks it over. It looks man-made and maybe valuable, but there's no maker's mark. Then her eyes go blank. A second later, snap, Kettle jolts her out of it. For a moment, she just stares ahead like her mind went somewhere else. Kettle asks if she's alright. It looked to him like the orb was pulling her in. Rosa doesn't remember that happening, but she does feel a strange power from it. She offers to get it appraised. Kettle just laughs. He says figuring it out himself is part of the fun, then asks for today's jobs. She gives him the usual F-rank work, cleaning and gathering, and Kettle lights up. Afterward, once another full day of labor is done, he returns to his room completely happy. He takes out the strange orb again, still thinking about what it did to Rosa. Then a soft voice suddenly whispers from inside it. Come to me, the message repeats, pushing directions straight into his head. Kettle figures it must be domination magic. The orb keeps pulsing with that eerie call, so of course he decides to follow it. The voice leads him to a cave and he announces that he's here. I've arrived. Who called me? A dark voice answers that another sacrifice has entered, mocking him as a stupid barbarian but an acceptable offering. The speaker is a skeletal mage with blue fire in its eyes. From a throne inside a huge ritual circle, it declares that its resurrection is finally near. So who is this pile of bones? Long ago he was an evil sorcerer who worked from the shadows. He stirred up wars until heroes finally came for him. When defeat closed in, he abandoned his body and sealed his soul in a vessel, turning himself into a lich. That made him nearly impossible to kill, as long as that soul vessel stays safe. To reclaim a body, he hid near this small town and spread those blue orbs to lure sacrifices. The orbs served as power sources for his return and, of course, the usual dreams of ruling everything. The plan was going smoothly until one huge problem showed up. Why is a barbarian here? He chose this remote place to avoid strong people, so Kettle's arrival makes no sense. Watching through magic, the Lich decides Kettle's size makes him a perfect sacrifice. His orb only charms people who haven't awakened magical power, so he assumes Kettle is just some magicless fool. That's why he sends the call. Come in, barbarian. Be the last piece I need. And Kettle walks right up to the cave's giant wooden door. He pushes it open and steps inside. At once he spots the one behind it all, a skeletal mage in robes with glowing blue eyes. Kettle is instantly amazed. It's a real Lich, like the final boss from a fantasy story. Now the Lich is the confused one. He demands to know what Kettle is. Realizing the mind control failed, Kettle looks at the bones on the floor and figures out how people were being lured in. But the Lich still can't sense any magic from him, so his only guess is that Kettle has some rare item protecting his mind. Kettle bluntly says he has nothing like that. The Lich stops talking and raises his glowing staff. If Kettle won't obey, then force will do. He summons undead servants and sends them out. The armed skeletons rush straight at him, but Kettle only smirks. So this really is an evil Lich in a dungeon. He smacks the first skeleton with one bare-handed hit, and it explodes apart. The Lich is stunned. Kettle shakes out his hand and says the Lich is a lot less impressive than he expected. That makes the Lich snap. He threatens to tear off Kettle's arms and legs and sends in all the rest. Cut him down. Kettle snorts and cracks his knuckles. One punch turns the first skeleton to dust, then a hard kick destroys another. Furious, the Lich says the game is over. His staff shines brighter as he calls out his strongest summon. Kettle's eyes widen. A giant armored skeleton knight rises with a huge sword and shield. And instead of panicking, Kettle gets excited. This one might actually be different. The Lich orders it to kill him, and the knight charges like a battering ram. Kettle grins and cracks his knuckles again. The knight swings its huge glowing sword, but Kettle just watches. A skeleton knight made by a Lich really is unusual, but one punch still caves in its skull. The giant undead falls apart in a blast of bone and debris. The Lich can only stare, speechless after that effortless destruction. As things settle, Kettle stomps on the knight's still-moving hand and crushes it completely. Then he glances back, already bored, and asks if that was all. The Lich desperately tries to understand what Kettle is, but his magic finds nothing. No mana, no hidden power, no artifact. It makes no sense. Did this barbarian really beat a top-class undead with only his fists? Realizing Kettle is far too unusual to leave alone, the Lich decides to fight him personally. He calls it an honor and floats down like some grand final boss. Suddenly Kettle cries out and staggers back as thick black fog wraps around him. The Lich's voice rolls through the cave, telling the barbarian to fear him. He says Kettle will pay for entering his sanctuary, but Kettle only looks puzzled. He says he came because the orb called him. Wasn't the Lich the one who left it out there? So yes, the Lich basically sent bait into town and Kettle took it. That sets the Lich off. He yells for silence and declares himself the great mage who destroyed 5 kingdoms. I am Kartos Brenula's Kessis. Kettle suddenly thinks of the elf queen and starts wondering if absurdly long names are just normal here. Done talking, Kartos fires off a huge vortex, a wave of dark magic. He calls Kettle the base for his return. The spell wraps around Kettle, and his eyes go dull, spinning like he's under a trance. Kartos starts bragging. This is his special spell. It traps people in dark emotions until their minds snap. He's sure a plain barbarian with no magic defense is finished. Easy win. But then something feels wrong. Thinking Kettle may be different, Kartos chooses to capture him instead, and sends his minions in. Another skeleton warrior pulls itself from the ground with its sword ready and moves toward the dazed Kettle. But right before it reaches him, a sharp purple glow flashes in Kettle's eyes. He spins in an instant and kicks the skeleton so hard its whole torso turns to dust. So much for being helpless. Then he looks back at the Lich like nothing happened, and once again, Kartos is left speechless. He can't understand it. How is this possible? That spell should have worked. Kettle barely reacts. He asks if the Lich is just going to keep staring, because it clearly isn't working. Ignoring that, Kartos pours in the rest of his power and starts chanting a dramatic spell. He launches his strongest attack, a giant sphere of dark energy that looks ready to devour everything. And how does Kettle answer a spell like that? His eyes light up like a kid on Christmas morning. Kartos laughs, sure he's won. But a second later, he starts coughing hard and collapses. He burned through all his mana, but he's still sure no barbarian could survive something that big. He looks up expecting a crater, then freezes in terror, because Kettle is still standing there without a single scratch. Kettle even says it was impressive, then asks if that's really all he's got. Kartos completely loses it. He just used his strongest spell, one powerful enough to break a great hero's mind, and it did nothing. He demands to know what Kettle is, but Kettle is more curious than scared. The attack looked amazing, yet he felt nothing. The Lich freezes in fear as Kettle picks up his axe with a cold smile and says it's his turn now. Just before Kettle can smash him to pieces, the Lich suddenly has a realization. A dark grin spreads across his skull as he thinks he's figured it out. Now he's convinced Kettle knows his true identity. He says Kettle came because he knew who he was, and that proves it. Kettle just stands there, wondering what this pile of bones is talking about. Then Kartos breaks into a huge villain laugh, claiming the Empire must fear him if it found him this fast. His ego is out of control. He shouts that he will rise again and destroy the world once more. He's heard stories about a secret Empire project that creates human weapons, and he's sure Kettle is one of them, made for the sole purpose of killing him. Even so, he refuses to go down without a fight. He declares his full name, I am Karos Branulus Kesses, and I will destroy the Empire. Kettle's only thought is simple. This guy has to be crazy. Finally done talking, the Lich summons a glowing ghostly urn. This is his phylactery, his soul vessel. He grabs it, ready to use his last move. Then boom, a huge beam of magic blasts from the urn and slams into Kettle's chest. Kettle's eyes turn white. Did it finally work? The Lich's plan is to force his soul into Kettle's body and take it over. But it's a one-way move. Once inside, he's stuck, unless he becomes a Lich again. Still, it's his only option. He takes control and declares that this body is now his. But the second he enters Kettle's mind, he knows he made a terrible mistake. He looks around in shock, asking what this place is. Is this really the Barbarian's mind? Just seeing that nightmare world is enough to shake him. Something is deeply wrong here. He even starts doubting whether the Empire sent Kettle at all. As his soul begins getting torn apart, he realizes no, the Empire couldn't have made something this terrifying. It's literally breaking his mind. With one last confused sound, the great Lich Kratos is erased for good. Back in the real world, Kettle just scratches his head wondering what that was. He only felt a tiny tickle, and that's it. In front of him, the Lich's body drops to the floor, empty. You'd think he'd be happy, but Kettle is actually disappointed. He thought the attack looked cool and wanted to know what kind of magic it was. He walks over to the bones, thinking Liches in this world are pretty weak. He has no clue what happened inside his own head. Still, a win is a win. So now it's time to collect the loot. He picks up the Lich's staff, remembering it glowed when magic was used. That gives him an idea. Maybe this magic stick will finally let him use magic too. So he stores it away, or as Kettle puts it, in his pocket. Then he notices another item, the urn. He picks it up and guesses it's a life vessel, so he plans to take it to Rosa for appraisal. After gathering everything, he looks around and suddenly his gamer instincts kick in. He notices a strange pattern on the wall that he missed before. A secret room? He wonders, then does exactly what you'd expect. He presses the button. Sure enough, the wall slides open and reveals a hidden chamber. He steps inside and finds a room packed with people just standing there like statues. His first reaction isn't concern, it's amazement that secret rooms are actually real. Then comes the second thought. Who are these people? He waves a hand in front of one man's face and calls out to him. He tries another person too, asking if anyone is still in there, but gets nothing. Now he's stuck wondering what to do with a room full of living statues. In the end, he decides the best move is to leave it alone. For once, his logic makes sense. The guild can handle it. So back at the mercenary guild, Kettle walks in with his new loot. Rosa greets him with a smile, surprised he's back so soon. Kettle just says he had a few things to handle. Nothing major, just wiping out an ancient evil. Rosa looks confused, and Kettle explains the orb and who sent it. She laughs it off, telling him not to joke about something that serious. After all, a Lich, one of only 5 in the whole world, hiding in a small town sounds ridiculous. So Kettle drops the giant purple urn on her desk. That gets her attention fast. He calmly says it's the Lich's life vessel and asks if she can appraise it. Rosa's mind basically shuts down. She goes still as she realizes he's telling the truth. Then Kettle casually mentions there are people inside too. He says he could have brought them out, but they looked half gone, so he left that to the guild. And then it hits Rosa. She finally links the Lich to the recent missing people. She jumps up and says she'll call someone right away. A few minutes later, a city guard rushes in asking if someone said Lich. Kettle gives a small wave and greets him. Then he says it's already taken care of. The guard nervously says the Lich's long fantasy name, and when Kettle confirms it, the man nearly shuts down. This Kratos was a legendary dark mage. A century ago, he drove kings mad and erased 5 kingdoms from the map. The guard can't believe something like that was hiding near their village. Kettle shrugs and says the Lich wasn't that amazing. He did some weird stuff and pretty much beat himself. The guard has no response. Sweating hard, the guard asks for more details, but Kettle's one working brain cell is done for the day. That's all he's got. Realizing this is far above his rank, the guard leaves to report it straight to the Lord. When the news reaches Lord Barkin, he is not pleased. A Lich this close to my land, he roars. The guard confirms everything. He has testimony from the rescued victims, and the Lich's phylactery is proof. Barkin immediately sees the problem. A Lich of this level will draw the Empire's attention, and his best fighter is away. This is bad. He slams a fist on the desk and gives the order to send a message to the capital at once. Barkin admits they were incredibly lucky. If Kettle hadn't found Kratos right after his return, they would have been the first to die. He knows the timing was perfect, but the feat is still unbelievable. This barbarian deserves a real reward. He wonders what you even give a man who can beat a legendary Lich alone. The next morning, urgent shouts echo through the castle. Barkin, already awake, calmly tells them to let the person in. The doors fly open, and a panicked maid rushes in. My lord, the sun god's inquisitor Lord Aquaz has arrived. Barkin's eyes widen in shock. Why would someone that important come all the way to his small territory? And there she is. The sun god's inquisitor has arrived. Later, Barkin sits across from her and gives his formal greeting as the lord of this land. She introduces herself as Aquaz, inquisitor of the sun god, a judge who punishes the lost. Barkin already knows exactly who she is, the youngest and strongest inquisitor on the continent. She's famous for hunting warlocks, and her authority is absolute. Aquaz gets straight to the point, saying his territory is a bit of a mess. Barkin tries to play it down, hoping she isn't here because of the Lich. So he finally asks why she came. She looks at him and says she's here because of a divine revelation. Barkin is stunned. But before Aquaz shares the divine message, she asks for something first. She wants to hear about the recent incident. As he explains what happened, she grows more and more shocked. A barbarian beat the Lich? Barkin says yes, and adds that the Lich was the infamous Kartos. That name hits Aquaz hard. What? That monster was here? To prove it, Barkin shows her the phylactery. The moment she sees the urn, her calm facade breaks. What happened in this place? She whispers. Gripping her holy symbol, her thoughts race around one question. Is the barbarian still in town? Barkin confirms it. Yes, the absurdly strong barbarian is still in his territory. He adds that this man keeps doing the impossible, then casually mentions Kettle also beats Swordmaster Kane. That leaves Aquaz speechless. Now she knows a new powerhouse has appeared, and quickly asks what tribe he comes from. Barkin says Kettle claimed he was from the White Wasteland. That answer hits Aquaz like a blow. The White Wasteland, the snowy desert, is demon land, and she does not like hearing that. Then a thought suddenly clicks. The pieces start coming together. An unknown force from a demon-filled land. She wonders if this barbarian might be the very reason she was sent here. Barkin is left completely confused. Aquaz, now fully decided, says she has to meet this barbarian in person, immediately. Meanwhile, Kettle is back in his room, looking over the gem he took from the Lich's staff. He figures it probably boosts magic, then decides he can ask a mage about it later. That thought ends fast when he realizes morning has already come. Time to start the day. Right then, a guard arrives with a message. The Sun God's Inquisitor wants to meet him at the church. The guard gives him a quick warning. Show proper respect when he meets her. Kettle just smiles and says not to worry. The guard, a bit thrown off, asks if he's ready to go. Now dressed in his barbarian gear, Kettle grins. Let's go. Quick world note. The gods here are completely real. They give people power, and the church is the center of that whole system. The guard leads Kettle through the city and stops before the huge church. Kettle looks up and immediately gets excited. He's clearly impressed by the Sun God's church. The guard tells him someone will meet him inside, so Kettle thanks him and walks in. He opens the doors and steps into the holy building. Inside, 3 nuns greet him at once. Welcome, Sir Kettle. One of them adds that Inquisitor Aquaz is waiting and offers to lead the way. They bring him to a flower-filled room where a woman stands waiting. She turns and introduces herself as Aquaz, Inquisitor of the Sun God, clearly here for business. Kettle smiles and introduces himself as Kettle the Barbarian. To him, she looks pretty young for an Inquisitor. That only makes him think she must be very capable to rise that high so fast. Aquaz, meanwhile, is already suspicious, wondering why this giant is smiling. Kettle gets right to the point and asks why he was called here. She says it's about the dungeon incident. The Lich he killed was Kartos, a famous monster responsible for countless deaths. According to her, Kartos was so powerful that only true heroes could normally face him. Kettle says he's heard the legends, but the Lich he met fought like an idiot and basically took himself down. When she clearly doesn't believe him, he closes his eyes and says that's simply what he saw. So Aquaz makes a bold proposal. Let her god witness their talk directly. It works like a holy lie detector. If he lies, the god reacts. She expects him to refuse and even tells him he's free to say no. Instead, Kettle looks thrilled. Why would I refuse? To him, this is a chance to feel real divine power. His childlike excitement completely throws Aquaz off. She can't understand why he seems so happy. Carefully, she asks if this makes him uneasy. Kettle just blinks and asks what she means. He has no reason to be bothered. He's been telling the truth the whole time, so what is there to worry about? Seeing how sure he is, Aquaz agrees and begins the ritual. She folds her hands and starts to pray. O God who guards the sun, let your gaze expose every lie here. The instant she finishes, a huge beam of golden light bursts from the church and shoots into the sky. Kettle is standing right in the middle of it, staring up in amazement. He can feel it, a presence far above, vast and overwhelming beyond words. And somehow he can even sense what that god is feeling. Confusion. Even the deity has no clue what to make of him. Then the light disappears and the room returns to normal. Aquaz quietly relaxes. No holy reaction, so he didn't lie. After steadying herself, she declares that from this moment on, no one in this room can lie. Kettle meets her gaze with an easy, confident smile. Okay, with the Sun God's lie test active, the questioning can begin. Kettle goes through the whole dungeon fight again. Step by step, not once does the god react. Aquaz is forced to accept it. He told the truth, and the weakened Lich really did lose like that. She apologizes for how rude she was, but Kettle just grins and says he actually enjoyed it. Just when it seems finished, Aquaz brings up one last thing, a personal question, and she's dead serious. She leans forward and asks the big one. Is he really from the White Snowfield? He answers yes without hesitation. That completely shakes Aquaz. The man really is from the demon realm. Her mind races. Could he be the Grey Barbarian from the old stories? Then Kettle flips the conversation. My turn. Why are you really here? She tries to brush it off as personal business, but he sees through that immediately and asks if she came to check whether he was some kind of monster. Direct hit. Aquaz gets flustered and tries to deny it, but Kettle doesn't let her slip away. He points to the holy setup around them. All this seems like way too much for a simple lie test. She's cornered. Under the god's gaze, she can't hide her real purpose. So you really came here for me? He presses. Panicking, she says no at first, then admits there was an oracle. A prophecy brought her here, and she thought he might be the one it meant. But the results of the test only made things more confusing. At last, she tells the full truth and apologizes for hiding it. Kettle, being Kettle, just says it was interesting. Now he's curious, so he asks what the oracle actually said. Aquaz hesitates. This is highly secret, something she would never normally reveal. But for some reason, she decides Kettle should hear it. So she tells him the prophecy, and whatever she says leaves Kettle completely speechless. A short time later, Aquaz stands by a window in a large hall when someone approaches. It's Lord Barkin, and he can tell right away something is bothering her. She says she met Kettle, but now she's even more confused than before. What exactly is he? Barkin confirms one thing. Kettle really is a barbarian from the White Snowfield. He says information from that place is almost impossible to get, but Kettle's origin seems certain. He'd hoped it was all a mistake. Because if this gets out, the entire world will panic. Too many people want control of the White Snowfield, especially the Emperor. And if the Emperor steps in himself, everything will turn into chaos. Aquaz tells him to calm down. They'll hide the Lich incident and keep Kettle's identity secret. Barkin can finally breathe again. Then he asks the obvious question. Are all barbarians from there like him? Aquaz thinks it over and says probably not. Her reasoning is simple. If they were all that strong, they would have taken over the world by now. Most barbarians are basically huge muscle heads with very little sense, but if one of those powerhouses also gets a sharp mind, you get someone like Kettle. Barkin brings up a rumor about the new barbarian king, another fighter said to have both brains and strength. Aquaz confirms the rumor. She's met him, and he was nothing like an ordinary barbarian. Barkin says a fight between Kettle and that king would be amazing. Aquaz immediately says, absolutely not. She reminds him that barbarians and followers of the gods already have a bad history, and a stronger barbarian is a serious problem. Barkin returns to the main issue. What was so important about the oracle? She says she needed to confirm something about Kettle. She had to know whether he was truly human or something else wearing a human form. Barkin is stunned and asks what the oracle actually said. When she finally reveals the real prophecy, Barkin looks like he's seen a ghost. Later, Kettle is called to Lord Barkin's office. The Lord starts with polite small talk, but Kettle cuts it off. He's fine. Why was he called? Barkin gets to the point. First, he thanks him. Kettle saved the whole territory from the Lich Kardos. He admits that if Kardos had been at full strength, they all would have died. Then comes the bad news. He tells Kettle that this victory has to stay secret. Defeating a Lich is huge, but if the Emperor hears about it, he'll move at once. Kettle doesn't care much. He wasn't after fame anyway. Barkin says it's not enough, but he did prepare a reward. He taps the desk and a servant brings it in. Kettle's eyes go wide. In front of him is a big glittering bag of treasure. He just stares, confused, until Barkin says it isn't a normal bag and tells him to try it. Kettle keeps staring at the little pouch, completely hooked by the shine. Barkin tells him to quit staring and open it. Then he explains what it is. An artifact. A storage artifact. The space inside is as big as the whole room. Kettle is stunned. It's his first time seeing one this close. Barkin adds that it can hold things bigger than the opening, so of course Kettle tests it right away. He pushes his huge axe toward the pouch and it slips right inside. Barkin tells him how to pull it back out, reach in and picture what he wants. Kettle can barely contain himself. He loves the gift and says he'll use it well. Once that's done, Barkin brings up one more thing, the prophecy. He recalls Swordmaster Kane's report that creatures from the demon realm have started appearing. Now he's wondering if those incidents connect to the same prophecy. It warned that a great evil would strike this land first, then spread across the world. Barkin's territory is made up of small villages that stay in regular contact. Then one far-off village suddenly went silent. A nearby town sent people to check on it, and they never returned. After that, Barkin sent guards and they vanished too. That's when he knew this was more than a lost message. At the mercenary guild, Rosa puts up an urgent request from the Lord. Kettle asks what the job is. She says they need someone to check the missing village. Rosa calls it a dispatch mission, but the reward is way higher than it should be. That's all Kettle needs to hear. Rosa smiles, already sure he's the right pick. Later at the meeting spot, the other mercenaries whisper nervously. Hayes stands off to the side, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Then she looks up when someone calls to her. Wait, is that Mr. Kettle? Kettle grins and shows off his brand new outfit. He says his old clothes were worn out, so he had new ones made based on his own design. Hayes realizes he's taking the quest too. He says he couldn't pass up something this interesting. Then he asks if the rest of their old party came along. Hayes says they were smart enough not to. Kettle looks around. For a mission with such a huge reward, the group is pretty small. Hayes tells him that's because this isn't really a simple job. The pay is too high for basic scouting. With the rumors about the missing guards, it's clearly something worse. Kettle still seems disappointed by the low turnout. Hayes leans closer and says there's another rumor, but cuts herself off with a nervous laugh when Aquaz, the sun god's heretic inquisitor, arrives. That was the rumor. The inquisitor herself joined, and that's why so many people stayed away. Kettle tells the panicking Hayes not to worry, calling Aquaz polite and kind. Hayes is shocked that he knows her. He says they're friends. That makes no sense to Hayes at all. A barbarian and an inquisitor. Kettle walks over to greet her, but Aquaz shuts him down at once. She says she doesn't remember being friends. Kettle just laughs and says maybe they can start now. Ignoring that, Aquaz asks if Hayes follows Lady Calrosia. Kettle is impressed she knows the name, but Aquaz looks bothered, so he asks what's wrong. She explains that Calrosia's followers are supposed to be in a resting period, and only high-ranking members should be outside. A moment later, she brushes it off, just as Hayes starts calling them over. Then someone else arrives. It's the guard captain with a few of his men ready for the mission. Kettle greets him with a big smile while Aquaz looks tired of his energy. Hayes, meanwhile, seems totally overwhelmed by the group around her. The captain welcomes everyone who accepted the request, and they head out right away. Soon, the team is on the road to the village. Kettle looks over the whole group and says this feels more like a raid than a simple job. Noticing Aquaz seems uneasy, he asks if this means her prophecy is finally starting. She says the gods never gave her a date and this could still be nothing more than a village going silent. Kettle keeps pushing, saying it's still possible. After all, the prophecy said a great evil would come to the world. Instead of fear, Kettle gives a small smile. The idea almost excites him. A few hours later, they reach the village. The guard captain says they've arrived and the place is dead silent. He asks Aquaz what she senses, and she confirms the worst, there isn't a single person inside. One guard suggests the villagers may have left, so the captain orders everyone to spread out and search. As the team moves, the captain can't shake the question. How do 100 people just disappear? He's set on finding the answer, so he orders the search to begin. Almost right away, one of the men finds something and calls for the captain. There's food still sitting on the table. The captain thinks they left it behind when they ran, but the soldier corrects him. The food is still warm. That hits hard because the village has been silent for days, and everyone sent to check on it disappeared too. Inside the house, a mercenary reports they found no sign that anyone escaped or hid. The captain grimly tells him to keep searching. Everywhere they look, it's the same. Proof people were just here, but no people at all. Another soldier reports back, saying there's clear evidence the villagers were present, but no clue where they went. It's like they vanished. The captain turns to Aquaz, hoping she knows something, but she doesn't. Then he looks to Kettle for an idea. Kettle says he hasn't found anything either. He can't sense anyone. Just as the captain starts to crack, Kettle calmly says they should ask someone who does know. When everyone stares at him, he points out the obvious. There's another person here. The captain panics at that, and a strange woman appears nearby with a smug smile. She acts surprised and says she thought she was perfectly hidden, then asks how he noticed her. Kettle walks up and gives a simple answer. She wasn't there before, and now she is. She laughs and says her magic normally makes people think she'd been there the whole time. Even the Inquisitor was fooled. Then she studies Kettle and notes he isn't a magic user. Her smile turns dark as she asks who he is. The guard captain instantly senses danger and orders everyone to fall back. As the guards retreat, he notices Aquaz has gone completely still. Terrified, she says she can't sense anything from the woman at all. That chills everyone, because if Aquaz can't read her, then either she's harmless or so powerful her presence can't be detected. Mercelia sighs, saying she wanted to trail them a little longer. Then her face twists into a monstrous grin as she says she's changed her mind. In an instant, she reveals her true form. Grinning wickedly, she promises to make them her slaves and drag them away. With a snap, dark magic bursts from her claw, and a huge sphere spreads out as she rises into the air. From above, she looks down at the stunned group. Even Kettle, Hayes, and Aquaz can only stare. One of the guards yells for everyone to run, but it's too late. A huge purple dome crashes down and seals them inside. The demon smugly says the whole village is now her hunting ground and none of them can leave. Fixing her glowing eyes on them, she says they're all prey now. The others are horrified to see a demon here, but Kettle just looks interested. Hayes shakily says it's a named demon, then drops into prayer at once. Kettle rests a hand on her head and tells her to calm down. He's right here with her. She looks up, unsure if that should comfort her. Then Kettle folds his arms and asks what makes a named demon such a big deal. So Hayes explains. Most beings people call demons are only weak bits of corrupted mana, but true demons are born from pure darkness and claim names through their own will. Even the weakest of them can destroy a whole kingdom. Kettle finally gets it and says, so that's what a named demon is. Hayes weakly confirms it. She recognizes this one as a Setiar, a feared demon from centuries ago, and can't understand why it's here. Kettle walks up to the barrier and wonders if he can punch through it. Hayes tells him it's unbreakable. The only way out is to defeat her. He taps the barrier and quietly says he understands. Then the wall starts cracking where he touched it. But if that happened, the fun would be over. So he starts flailing around like an idiot, hiding the crack from Hayes while laughing. Hayes stares at him confused and asks what he's doing. He just gives her a bright thumbs up and stays quiet. Then the focus shifts back to the fight. The demon mocks Aquaz, asking if she enjoyed the game played with the village. Aquaz thinks back to that empty village, where food was left half-eaten, and realizes it was all just a demon's prank. Disgust twists across her face. This monster treats human lives like toys. Meanwhile, Kettle watches their mental showdown like it's a movie, complete with 3D glasses and popcorn. Aquaz quickly figures something out. Summoning a named demon should take a huge sacrifice, far more than one village. And a being this strong shouldn't have been able to claim territory without anyone noticing. Under the red moon, a Setiar only smirks. Did you really think I'd tell you my plan? Aquaz tightens her fist and declares that this vile corruption has no right to stain the earth. The demon throws her head back and laughs. Then she sneers at the dog of God, asking if she really thinks her little god can save her. A Setiar says the world is breaking apart, and it doesn't belong to humans alone anymore. Long ago, she explains, gods and humans joined forces in an ancient war against evil. They won, and the demons were cast out of the world. From the depths of hell, she says she has waited for this day. Then comes the reveal. She is a Setiar, the demon of gravity. She swears to erase the shame of her old defeat and drown the world in evil. Aquaz fires back, calling her a filthy creature and saying this world belongs only to gods and humans. Evil will be sent back where it came from. As she raises her hand, holy light bursts out. Calling on her god, Aquaz is swallowed by a towering pillar of sacred power. When the glow fades, she's clad in shining golden armor and holding a huge holy key-shaped blade. Kettle of course gives his review. Just as I thought, she doesn't get attacked during the transformation. Now her transformation is complete. Aquaz fixes the demon with a hard stare, her eyes blazing with divine power. Asetiar doesn't look worried at all. She just smirks and says, interesting. Then she crushes a sphere of dark energy in her hand. From it, she forms a huge demonic scythe. With that, she calls Aquaz a dog of the gods and tells her to come on. Aquaz lunges forward at once, calling her an insolent wretch. Holy gold crashes against demonic purple in a blinding clash. The hit sends out a huge shockwave, ripping up the battlefield. When the dust clears, Asetiar is holding Aquaz's massive weapon with one bare claw. She mocks the Inquisitor for losing her dignity in battle and asks if hunting dogs know no shame. Aquaz's eye twitches with fury. Her patience is gone. Are you done talking? Done barking, Asetiar says, and Aquaz slams down in a burst of holy gold, ready to fight head-on. But then Asetiar vanishes, catching Aquaz off guard. A voice whispers from the dark, I'm here. Asetiar strikes from behind, and Aquaz barely gets her golden shield up before the demon's claws smash into it. Grinning, Asetiar tells her to get crushed. Dark power erupts and blasts Aquaz backward. She digs her heels into the ground, struggling to hold against the force. Cracks spread across her shield, so Aquaz starts reciting scripture. None may trespass upon the light of radiance. It works. In a flash, a huge burst of golden light throws the demon back. Aquaz stands in holy fire, glaring at Asetiar. But Asetiar rises again, looking impressed more than hurt. For someone your age, being able to read holy scripture is impressive. Aquaz doesn't answer. She keeps praying, quoting Carmenon chapter 5 verse 59. Its radiance burned away all evil. This time though, Asetiar casually blocks the holy blast with her wing, so Aquaz changes tactics and rushes in up close. She attacks in a frenzy, but the demon is too fast, dodging every strike as they trade blows at incredible speed. Aquaz is clearly straining, while Asetiar looks like she's having fun. Their weapons slam together in another huge clash. The shockwave tears through the streets around them. The rest of the group gets blasted away, screaming in terror. Back in the center of it all, the two powerhouses stay locked in a brutal close-range fight, and Kettle, he just watches with a big grin, enjoying every second. Hayes runs over in a panic, begging him to help Lady Aquaz. Kettle glances at him and casually says he probably could, but asks why he should. Hayes can only stare at him in disbelief. Kettle's reasoning is simple. It's not his problem, and he doesn't want to ruin a good fight. He even admits he wants to fight a demon himself, but for now, he's fine just watching. Hayes is completely stunned. This is not how a hero should act. While they argue, the clash of light and darkness explodes again. Asetiar knocks aside another strike and sneers. So you really are God's hunting dog. Then she boasts that her strength is greater. But Aquaz catches an opening. Convinced that demonic power can never truly stand against the gods, Asetiar realizes the fight is turning into a stalemate. If this keeps up, she'll gain nothing. So she needs an edge fast. And like any dirty villain, she suddenly rockets toward the defenseless party members. Aquaz shouts a warning and tries to stop her, but Asetiar is too fast. The demon unleashes a brutal attack at the helpless adventurers. A filthy move. The party screams as holy and demonic power explodes around them. Furious, Aquaz grits her teeth and throws herself in front of the blast to shield her companions. Her eyes blaze as she shouts, filthy creature. Asetiar only laughs in her face. Did you really expect a demon to fight fair? Aquaz burns with rage and starts chanting again, drawing on even more power. Then she speaks a holy verse and unleashes a massive flood of golden energy. A radiant sanctuary forms as she yells for her companions to get inside. Watching from the shadows, Asetiar enjoys the whole scene. She mocks Aquaz for wasting such a huge spell, but Aquaz sharply tells her to shut up. That only makes Asetiar smile more. That's the reaction she wanted. Then the talking ends. Both of them charge straight at each other. Aquaz swings her huge cross-shaped weapon, sending a wide golden arc through the air. Asetiar dodges easily and appears above her, saying death is only death. She flashes in close and whispers that no one will remember Aquaz's noble sacrifice. Then she kicks at her, sneering that Aquaz will bring only shame to her god. Next comes the cruel offer. Drop the shield protecting your friends, and maybe she'll let her win. Aquaz doesn't fall for it, and calls out the cheap trick. Asetiar grins and asks if she really thinks she's leaving here alive. Aquaz sets her stance and says she's heard enough. Fine, the demon says, then die like a martyr. She fires off a massive pillar of dark energy, forcing Aquaz to brace herself against it. Then, all of a sudden, Asetiar appears right in front of her, moving too fast to follow. Before Aquaz can react, the demon strikes. A huge blast of energy sends the Inquisitor flying back. Aquaz looks up in shock and pain as Asetiar rushes in again. Too fast to stop. Dark tendrils lash out and bind Aquaz completely. She can't understand it. Her sanctuary should be holding back the darkness, but it's being overwhelmed. Asetiar cuts through the chaos with one cold line. Enough. I'm sick of hearing your god's boring verses. Then she drives a fist into Aquaz's stomach, shattering her golden aura. As Asetiar comes in for another blow, Aquaz barely gets her shield up. It doesn't matter. The shield breaks apart into a spray of golden light. As Setir's energy blade cuts through Aquaz's armor, she grabs the shield's crystal core while Aquaz cries out in pain. Just like that, Aquaz is beaten, bound in dark magic and left writhing. With the Inquisitor down, the golden dome protecting the others cracks and shatters. The party is left exposed and terrified. Setir grins and tells them not to worry. She'll save them for dessert. First, she turns back to Aquaz. She wonders what a noble hound of God tastes like. As she opens her fanged mouth to bite, a calm voice cuts in. Stop. A hand grabs her face and halts her cold. It's Kettle. That's far enough. The demon is stunned. Kettle stands there holding her back with ease. She couldn't even sense him. With a simple flick of his wrist, he sends the demoness flying across the square. Then Kettle stands over Aquaz and asks if she's alright. Looking up in shock, she remembers he's the man who beat Swordmaster Kane. But before she can process it, that threatening presence returns. Setir is back, glaring at them both, and she is furious. She pulls herself out of the rubble and snarls, "Insolent barbarian." Her eyes blaze with rage as she screams, "How dare you interrupt my meal?" Kettle folds his arms and calmly answers, "She's my friend. I'm not letting her die." Cedric scoffs, saying she had planned to keep him around as a toy. Kettle just stares back and says he has no interest in being anyone's toy. She flashes a cruel smile and asks, "Really?" The huge purple scythe appears in her hand. Then she says he'll have to die. Right then, another voice cuts in. "Step aside, it's Aquaz." She insists Kettle can't defeat a demon. He says he's strong enough, but she shakes her head. "This isn't about strength or weakness. Only divine power can drive out a demon," she explains. "That's just how the world works. And inside a demon's domain, it's even worse." She warns him not to count on some miracle. Kettle quietly repeats it to himself. So only gods can fight demons. Then he looks at her condition and says even if that's true, she's clearly in no shape to fight. Still, Aquaz grits her teeth and says she has to. She serves the gods and stands against evil. Kettle studies her, honestly impressed. So that's the resolve of someone who serves the divine. He smiles, pats her head, and tells her to leave this to him. Aquaz can only stare. Kettle? He just grins and says he's wanted to fight a demon himself. Cedric isn't impressed at all. She reminds him he cannot defeat her. Kettle's grin grows wider. Want to test that? Cedric runs her tongue over her sharp teeth, clearly enjoying this. She wants to watch his face twist in pain. Then she leaps, vanishes, and a wormhole opens right in front of Kettle. She drops on him with claws ready and madness in her eyes. Aquaz watches in horror and can only scream no. Cedric smiles like she's already won. But then Kettle's fist slams straight into her face. Bam! The hit sends the demon flying and blows her head apart. Aquaz just freezes, totally stunned. Huh? She can barely understand what she saw. Did Kettle really punch a demon's head clean off? Kettle meanwhile looks almost bored, like he's still figuring out what just happened. He looks over at the headless demon and his eyes widen. Wait. A burst of dark energy flashes and her whole body grows back from nothing. She's returned. Kettle only smiles, fascinated. So crushing your head makes you regenerate. Cedric is furious and confused. What are you? Kettle scratches his head and gives the most annoying answer possible. He says he's just an ordinary barbarian. Yeah, she doesn't believe that at all. Don't make me laugh. She can't sense magic or aura from him. He feels like a normal man, which makes no sense. Fine then. If he won't explain, she'll beat the answer out of him. A demonic face forms behind Kettle as she lunges, screaming die. Kettle looks mildly surprised and mutters that hitting her human form feels a little awkward. But he has no choice, so he punches right through her. The demon is stunned. What? The blow sends her flying and the impact triggers a huge shockwave through her body, tearing parts of it apart. She crashes down and struggles to rise, unable to accept what just happened. It was only a simple punch, she thinks. No aura, no magic. Kettle cracks his knuckles with a smile. You regenerated again. Cedric starts sweating. Meanwhile, Kettle is busy trying to figure out how her power works. Then he launches himself forward like a cannonball. She barely has time to react before he's suddenly right in front of her. He throws another crushing punch aimed straight at her head again. Dark smoke leaks from her body, turning into tendrils that pull her back together at once. Kettle watches, impressed as she fully reforms. Oh, he says with a grin. So when the head is destroyed, it makes a whole new body. That does sound like a demon. As he wonders if her head is the core, Cetra begins to tremble and dark power rises around her. She can't believe this. It's insane. Does he really think brute force alone can beat her? Then she decides maybe meeting force with force is pointless. You, she calls out. Me? Kettle answers, clueless. With a wicked grin, she introduces herself again. Listen well, I am Esatir, the demon of gravity. Does he really think he can fight her with only his fists? Kettle pauses, then flatly says she doesn't look that impressive. That one line destroys her pride. She loses it in pure rage, while Kettle just looks confused. Now she's truly furious. Her eyes glow red as she charges, weapon shifting into a mallet. She hurls a wave of gravity magic at him, but Kettle casually lifts one hand and stops it cold. Not bad, he says. Heavy though. Then he breaks the mallet and sends that power right back at her. He follows with another punch that blows her head apart again. Impossible, she thinks, and just like before, her body rebuilds itself in a flash of purple light. She can't believe it. She's the demon of gravity, able to pack the weight of a fortress wall into one attack. Yet a barbarian with no special powers is overwhelming her. Kettle only watches with curiosity. Back again? So are demons immortal? That casual question is the last straw. Etc. shakes with rage. She releases another huge burst of purple power, screaming impossible. Die, Barbarian, she shrieks, forming a giant claw of dark energy above Kettle. Kettle's answer? He clenches his fist and punches straight up, blowing her magic apart. The strike tears through the attack like a beam of force and slams into Etc., exploding against her as she screams. Inside her holy barrier, Aquas is left speechless. What am I even looking at? She remembers the stories about Etc., a demon so powerful she erased an entire kingdom centuries ago. And a demon like that is getting crushed by plain punches. It doesn't feel real. But once again, Etc. twists back together in dark energy as her regeneration kicks in. She hits the ground, and Kettle casually plants his foot on her head to hold her down. Truly impossible to kill, he realizes, so pure physical strength alone can't finish her. Hearing that, Etc. grins sharply from under his boot. She can hardly believe it. Pinned there, she realizes his strength is beyond anything she expected, so she starts laughing like a madwoman. Etc. demands to know what he is, and Kettle calmly repeats that he's an ordinary barbarian. She snarls that she doesn't buy it. Don't make me laugh. Still, there's one more thing she wants to try. A huge wave of dark magic bursts from her body and catches everyone off guard. The whole group is stunned. The energy compresses into a thick sphere, then boom, it bursts, revealing her new form. Smiling darkly, she tells the barbarian she'll use all the power she has. A barrage of dark spears appears and shoots straight at Kettle. He only grins, excited by the fight. Aquaz, on the other hand, panics. Raw strength alone won't win this, so she starts gathering divine power. Etc. doesn't wait. She unleashes the attack. Demonic spear, pierce, and kill. The swarm rushes in, ready to skewer Kettle. But Kettle knocks away every single spear without any effort. Cedric is stunned. What kind of monster is he? She shrieks. Then in a blur, Kettle charges straight at her. While the demon is still trying to understand it, Aquaz begins a holy chant. That radiance burned all wicked things, she cries, and Kettle's axe shines with golden divine light. Kettle looks interested for a moment, then Aquaz shouts for him to strike now. He wanted to study the demon longer, but he knows this is the moment. So long, demon, he says, and cuts across her chest with the axe. This time, the holy power tears right through her. Cedric can't believe it. In her last moment, she realizes she lost. Divine light swallows the demon and drives her into the ground. Kettle stands over the crater, smiling. Thanks. That was fun, he says. As her body fades, she chuckles. Too bad, but it wasn't pointless. She says she confirmed that someone like him exists on the surface. Then she asks his name, and before Aquaz can stop him, Kettle answers. Aquaz cries out for him not to, but it's already too late. Kettle can only mutter, oops, as Cedric grins horribly. She's sending a message to the underworld. All beings of hell, remember the name of the barbarian Kettle. Aquaz nearly collapses in despair. Deep in hell, countless demonic eyes snap open and turn toward the world above. That massive eyes fixes on Kettle. He just stands there, confused, as the demonic presence appears right in front of him. As Cedric laughs that the barbarian now belongs to them. Then the eye creature lunges and pierces through Kettle's body. Suddenly they're all confused. They can't break through him at all. What is this? Then a giant shadowy hand reaches out and plucks it away. Poof, it turns to dust. Back in the real world, Kettle just blinks, completely unfazed. He touches his chest and wonders what she just did. It felt like something went inside him. The demon's last remnant is horrified. It can't understand why its darkness couldn't take hold, and Kettle casually kicks the leftover energy away like dust. Meanwhile, Aquaz and Haze are losing their minds, shouting in total disbelief. Kettle, though, stretches like he just finished a morning jog, completely relaxed as the energy fades. Then he turns to his stunned friends with a pleased smile, and asks the only thing on his mind. Asks, so, does that mean the request is done? Yep, it sure is for our favorite barbarian. While they talk after the fight, word about what happened starts racing across Barkan territory like wildfire. Newsboys yell, extra, extra. News from the village that went dark. People grab the papers fast, shocked by what they read. The headline drops huge news. A demon named Cedric appeared right after the Lich incident. Lord Barkan loses it, pounding his throne and demanding to know why his small land keeps becoming the center of disaster. He can barely process it. A famous demon from old records suddenly showed up. His captain says the rumors are spreading fast, but at least they have one good angle to use. The official version is that the Sun God's Inquisitor arrived in time and drove the demon away. Barkan knows they have to be careful now. One mistake could make everything worse. Meanwhile, Kettle talks with his new friend and asks why everyone seems so tense. Aquaz tells him this is a very serious matter. He notices she's leaving already and says she should rest a little longer, but she refuses. There's no time to waste. The Holy Land has to hear about this right away. Kettle just accepts it and says he won't stop her. As he starts to leave, she calls out to him and makes him stop. With a small bow, she thanks him for saving her, saying she would have ended up as the demon's prey. Kettle, being Kettle, just brushes it off. To him, it was nothing big. He was only helping a friend. Then he flashes a grin and asks, we're friends now, right? Aquaz is stunned. A barbarian and a divine inquisitor being friends wasn't something she expected. She reminds him that she's the Sun God's Inquisitor, but Kettle just asks if there's any reason they shouldn't be friends. That honest answer breaks through her guard. He's just too sincere. Kettle laughs and says, see? Then it doesn't matter. A small smile finally softens her serious face. You're right. Now that they've made peace, Ketel brings up something else. He asks if telling a demon your name is really that dangerous. Aquas turns serious again. She says it has to do with something called a brand. Then she explains demons can use a name to place a dark mark on your soul. It's basically a sign that makes you stand out to evil beings nearby. If that happens, you need holy power to remove it, or you become demon prey. Ketel points at himself, confused, and asks if that happened to him. Aquas says no. Somehow he wasn't branded. Still, she warns him with a grim look. His name is probably known all across hell by now, but without the brand, they know who he is, not where to find him. So unless he runs into them himself, he should be alright. Ketel finds that interesting, especially the part where his attacks didn't wipe the demon out for good. Aquas tells him that's simply how demons work. Then comes more history. Long ago, the gods created humans. Humans lived however they wanted, and the gods mostly let them be. Later, strange beings from another dimension took interest in the human world. Those beings became known as demons and caused chaos. The gods finally stepped in, joined forces with humans, and drove the demons back to their own realm. Afterward, people built churches to honor the gods, and peace lasted for a while. But eventually, demons began slipping back into the human world. So the gods gave part of their power to loyal followers, since only holy power can truly damage demons. Ketel finally understands. They can't be killed normally because they're basically from another world. Aquas agrees. They were never part of this world to begin with. Ketel says it would be a huge problem if demons started appearing all the time. Aquas assures him the stronger ones can't just come and go whenever they want. Still, she reveals the seal on the demon realm seems weaker now. Dungeon cycles are off, and monsters are showing up more often. It all started about a year ago. Ketel suddenly freezes. A year ago? That was the same time he finished his last quest in the snowy field. Pulling him from his thoughts, Aquas says she has to leave. On her way out, she invites him to visit her holy order someday, and says he'll be welcome. Ketel smiles and says he'd like that very much. Then Aquas departs, heading off by carriage to make her report. Even while still recovering, she knows this news has to reach the Saintess as soon as possible. But one question keeps bothering her the whole way. Why did the sun god say nothing at all about that barbarian? While Aquas wrestles with that, someone else is having a very different day. Swordmaster Cain walks through the palace with a heavy sigh. He mutters that meeting the Emperor is exhausting. Then a smooth voice behind him says he looks like he's having a hard time. Cain turns and sees a man with long dark hair and a striking presence. This isn't just anyone. It's the great master of the Magic Tower, the man at the top of the magic world. With a smirk, the master asks what brought Cain here. Cain tosses the question back at him. The master says it's only a routine visit, while Cain explains he came to report on his latest mission. That catches the master's interest. He brings up the recon trip to the Demon Realm's Forest of Silence and asks how it went. Cain's face darkens immediately. He says it went against everything they knew and calls the place terrifying. In that forest, there was no sound at all, and even his detection magic was useless. No matter how loud he shouted, there was nothing back. No sound, no echo, just silence. His soldiers disappeared one after another, and all Cain can call it is deeply awful. Back in the present, he wonders why the Emperor is so set on conquering the Demon Realm, then decides powerful people are just crazy. The Master only smiles, admitting the Demon Realm interests him too. Cain wants no part of that and says he'd rather stay ordinary. With a snap, the Master traps them inside a huge magic circle. So much for ordinary. Cain stares in shock at the spatial magic and asks what this is about. The Master walks closer and says there's no need to hide it anymore. Then he asks if Cain met someone very special, and Cain knows he's been found out. He realizes right away that someone was spying on him. The eye of observation? When did you put that on me? The Master casually says it's just a hobby, which only makes Cain more annoyed. Then the Master gets to the point. He wants to know what Cain thinks of the barbarian from the White Snowfield. Cain answers carefully, saying he still isn't sure what to think of him. So the Master lays it out. A barbarian from the Demon Realm who beat a Swordmaster and the Lich Kardos. That makes the answer seem obvious. Cain is shocked to hear that. He didn't know Kardos had been defeated, and the Master is surprised by that too. He explains that it isn't public yet, but rumors about Kardos failing his resurrection are already moving through the Magic Tower. Then comes the real reveal. The Master says he's a Lich as well, and even went to pay respects to his fallen friend. Cain barely reacts, only asking if a Lich can even feel sad. The Master insists that even someone as old as him values friendship. Then he adds that Kardos' most precious artifact was never found. He says he has no idea where it went. Leaving that aside, he asks Cain the real question. Does he truly believe that Barbarian defeated Kardos? Cain thinks for a moment and says it's possible. The Lich Master notes Cain still hasn't told the Emperor, and Cain immediately rejects that idea. He calls the Emperor a madman and fears that if he learns about Ketil, a massive war will follow. A barbarian like that clashing with a controlling emperor could tear the whole empire apart. The Lich Master finds that possibility exciting. He asks if Cain really thinks that Barbarian could face the whole empire alone. Cain isn't sure, but says the feeling he got was similar to the one he had when he first met the Master. That makes the Lich Master's eye glow. Are you saying he's hero class? Cain says he can't judge that for sure. But the Lich Master already seems convinced that Ketil is extremely valuable, and that expression on his face worries Cain. Meanwhile, the man they're talking about is walking through the market in new adventurer gear. A woman suddenly trips and Cadel catches her before she hits the ground. He smiles and asks if she's okay and tells her to be more careful. The woman just stares at him for a moment. Cadel assumes he scared her again. Instead, she bows, thanks him, and calmly leaves. No screaming, no running. Cadel is completely confused. He's never had a normal interaction like this before. Then another villager passes by him without panic, and Cadel's brain nearly shuts down. He's completely stunned, with one thought stuck in his head: why aren't people avoiding him anymore? A little later, Cadel sits down for tea with Lord Barkin in his fancy office. Barkin asks if he's okay after almost getting marked by a demon. Cadel brushes it off. To him, it's no problem. He doesn't even know what a brand is. That leaves Barkin speechless. He knew Cadel was strong, but not this clueless. Cadel mentions that something around him has changed. Barkin asks if he means the people. Cadel nods. The people in this territory. With a sigh, Barkin tells him it's because of the rumors. Every guard and mercenary who lived through the attack has been spreading the same story. According to them, after Aquas was defeated, everyone else dropped, everyone except Cadel. And when they came to, his axe was glowing with holy power. Now the whole town believes Aquas blessed him, and they call him the hero who fought the demon beside her. At last, Cadel gets it. So that's what happened. Barkin apologizes, saying the tale had already grown into a legend before he could correct it. Cadel finally connects it all. That's why nobody runs from him now. Barkin agrees. People don't see him as a monster anymore. Now they call him the Demon Opponent. Cadel turns the new title over in his head. Demon Opponent, huh? So this is what having a reputation feels like. At the Mercenary Guild, Rosa greets Cadel with big news. He's been promoted to C rank. Cadel can hardly believe it. C rank? He jumped up 3 whole ranks, and Rosa says he earned it. A slow grin spreads across his face. Rosa adds that his badge is being remade, though the custom work will take some time. That gets him even more excited. A custom badge just for him? Rosa confirms it. Starting at C rank, you're recognized as a real guild mercenary. She says this rank lets him take jobs in almost any major city, and even enter most churches, just not the imperial capital. Cadel comments that the empire sounds strict. Rosa agrees. Only people approved by nobles can enter. Then she lowers her voice and admits nobody really knows what's inside. People only hear creepy rumors. Less is known about it than the demon realm. Cadel looks worried. It's that bad? Rosa clears her throat and moves back to business. As a C rank, she explains, he can now accept almost any request. He can even go into A rank dungeons if he's with a party, and Cadel instantly starts thinking about the rewards. The idea of better loot and bigger adventures brings out his usual smirk. Elsewhere, Alessandro nearly spits out his drink in shock. He can't believe all that really happened. When he asks if everything's fine now, Cadel says the demon is gone. The Inquisitor approved it, and that should settle things. The cleric Hayes lets out a relieved sigh while sitting with them and their other teammate Kessin. Kessin gushes about how amazing the Inquisitor was, but Hayes suddenly slams the table and yells, "Here's the thing. Hayes never actually passed out during the fight. She saw the whole battle, and Cadel completely crushed that demon. Aquas only showed up at the end and took credit for a fight that was already over." Trying to move things along, Kessin asks what Cadel plans to do now that he's a C-rank star. Cadel answers like it's nothing. He'll keep doing the same work, just as a C-rank now. Kessin is blown away by that calm answer and thinks it's the coolest thing ever. Hayes, meanwhile, is panicking inside. Don't be fooled, she thinks that thing is not human. Cadel then asks what the rest of them plan to do. Kessin shrugs. As Feyar ranks, there isn't much they can do yet. He admits his old life goal was basically to mooch off others until he died, but now he wants to really live, like Cadel. Alessandro immediately calls him a bum for only deciding that now. While those two start arguing, Cadel turns to Hayes and asks about her plans. Flustered, she says she'll simply follow her goddess's will. That reminds Cadel of something Aquas said, and the second he brings up Aquas, Hayes freezes. Cadel recalls hearing that most servants of Colossia are taking a break, and only the higher-ups are still working. Hayes starts sweating hard. What? She quickly denies it all and insists Aquas must have been wrong. Cadel calmly accepts the obvious lie. Inside, though, Hayes is freaking out. She's sure he knows everything and can't tell if he's waiting for a confession or just toying with her. By then, she's completely terrified of him. Much later that night, back at the Mercenary Guild, Rosa is packing up her things, ready to head home. Then the door creaks open. The second she sees a worn-out pair of boots step in, her good mood dies. You've got to be kidding me. A hooded old man says he has a request, and Rosa has only one thought: overtime. Hiding her annoyance, she asks what kind of job he wants. The man clears his throat and says he needs an escort for 2 people, himself and a young girl. Rosa starts writing it down. 2 people, and where to? He answers, the capital of the kingdom of Dayan Teveharian. Rosa is stunned. An escort request all the way to Dayan Teveharian's capital from a remote town like this is crazy. Her suspicion kicks in fast. He talks like a noble, dresses in rags, and hides who he is. Still, she agrees to take the request for now, but first she asks for identification. The old man calmly slides a metal token across the table. Rosa's eyes go wide. It's a Mercenary Guild token. Something hard to get, like a VIP pass. After confirming it, she gets straight to work. Next comes the fee. The old man reaches into his cloak and pulls out a single gold coin. Rosa looks at the coin, then at him. For that amount, they can provide 1 person. The old man is shocked. Only 1? Rosa explains this is a dangerous month-long escort job all the way to Dayan Teveharian. He begs for at least 2 guards, and Rosa sighs, saying she might scrape together cheaper options. But a dependable escort should be at least D rank. He insists he needs someone capable, and Rosa stays firm. For that price he gets 1 skilled mercenary. No more. Her patience is running thin. Why is this man so desperate? Still, she gives a little ground. Jobs from a far-off town like this are hard to fill anyway. In the end, she agrees to try, but after he leaves, she notices the gold coin was filed down to hide where it came from. This is definitely trouble. Later that night, the old man knocks on a door. A woman asks who's there, and he answers, "Your loyal retainer." So that's the kind of situation this is. The door opens, and a blonde woman named Elaine greets the old man, Aaron, and lets him in. She nervously asks how it went, and Aaron tells her the guild accepted the request for now. She's relieved, but then asks the big question, how many mercenaries? Aaron can't meet her eyes. Just 1. Elaine goes silent. Aaron apologizes, explaining they don't have the money. Elaine says it can't be helped, and Aaron starts blaming himself for being scammed on the road. They try to comfort each other, but both of them are miserable. Before long, they break down crying together. Then someone suddenly tells them to be quiet. Poor kids. Elaine asks how long it will take to find someone, but Aaron doesn't know. Worn out, she says they should sleep on it. That's all they can do for now. Aaron bows, still full of shame. Another night passes in worry as their food keeps running low. Aaron blames himself, but Elaine stops him and says none of this is his fault. Aaron says they can't tell the local lord what's going on, and Elaine agrees. Even paying for 1 bodyguard is already pushing their limit. Then she reminds him why they ran from their kingdom in the first place. They were surrounded by enemies and couldn't tell ally from foe. Aaron apologizes again for not being stronger. Elaine asks if Dayan Teverian is truly safe, and he says yes. He explains that Dayan Teverian's king swore to protect her, though helping them could also make that kingdom a target. Then he says it plainly, she has to live, Elaine Mavrosi. She's a princess in hiding, and if she falls, their kingdom is done. Even so, the princess still worries. Can they really trust a mercenary? Aaron takes her hands and promises their gold will buy someone reliable. So who will guard her? A blush rises as she pictures a handsome, charming hero. Poor girl, she has no idea what's coming. Meanwhile, that hero is just Kettle lying on his bed, bored out of his mind. He starts thinking about his old companions in the white snowfield. They were the only ones who never kept their distance from him. With a sigh, he figures they're still out there living their usual dumb lives. Then a thought hits him. Maybe his quest is over. The system window that followed him into this fantasy world is gone. He remembers the first mission, survive 1 week in that frozen nightmare. Back then, that blue window was his only guide and only company. But once he escaped the snowfield, the quest stopped. Now that life is calm, he's getting restless. He suddenly sits up as a new idea hits him. Wait, was the system only meant for the white snowfield? Looking into the night, he decides it doesn't matter. Thanks for everything, system window. From here on, I'll enjoy this world my way. The next day, Kettle returns to the guild in his new gear, where Rosa has a job waiting for him, an escort request. Rosa can barely hide how relieved she is that someone finally took this shady job, so Kettle asks what makes it so special. Rosa explains it's a D-rank escort. 1 young woman and an old man need to reach the capital of Digkana Farayan. On paper, it sounds simple. Kettle doesn't look impressed, and Rosa warns him the trip is long. He'll also have to handle everything himself. That sounds annoying, but the reward is surprisingly good, which usually means there's a problem. The way Rosa says it makes that pretty obvious. With a serious look, she tells him straight up, the request feels wrong. If he wants to refuse, that's fine. But Kettle just breaks into a huge smile. To him, that's exactly why the job sounds interesting. Rosa is completely lost. She really does not understand how his mind works. Kettle looks back at the request form. The name Dayan Teverian catches his attention. Then it clicks. He remembers Molina Akasha, the noble woman he saved in the snowfield. She told him to visit if he ever came to her kingdom, and even gave him her family crest. Grinning, he slaps the table and accepts on the spot. The second he does, something flashes at the edge of his vision, and suddenly the blue system window appears again. It finally came back, this time with a new quest. Escort the clients to Dayan Teverian. Kettle is stunned. Why did it return now? Rosa can't see any of it. All she sees is him staring into nothing, so she asks if he's okay. Somewhere else in town, an old man named Aaron rushes inside to find a young woman. Elaine panics at first, thinking their enemies found them, but Aaron brings good news. The only C-rank mercenary around accepted their request. Hope lights up Elaine's face. A C-rank. Aaron says they'll meet him tomorrow. Back with Kettle, he's still trying to make sense of the system window's return. Alone in his room, he wonders why the quest stopped after he left the demon realm, only to start again now. Maybe the system was never just tied to the white snowfield, or maybe something much bigger is going on. The next day, a storm hits while Elaine and Aaron head to the guild to meet their escort. Elaine nervously wonders what he'll be like. In her head, he's a handsome, battle-tested hero with scars and a cool presence. Whatever the case, she's sure he'll be impressive. Then the door opens. Rosa greets the newcomer, and Elaine looks up, waiting for her hero. That dream dies instantly. In the doorway stands not a charming protector, but a giant, terrifying figure with glowing white eyes. Kettle calmly introduces himself, and Elaine freezes in fear. The shock is too much. She faints on the spot, and Aaron barely catches her. He glares at Kettle and demands to know who he is. Kettle actually finds it a little funny. It's been a while since anyone here reacted to him like that. He'd almost gotten used to being treated like a hero. Eren turns to Rosa in a panic, asking if this is really their escort. Rosa says yes, and starts the introduction. She presents him as the one assigned to guard them, Barbarian Kettle Nim. Eren is horrified. A barbarian? He immediately asks for someone else. Rosa's face goes cold, so now he's questioning the guild's judgment? Eren quickly tries to backpedal, but Rosa cuts him off. If he doesn't trust the guild, the contract is over. While they argue, Keto lets out a tired sigh. This is a mess. Then a voice cuts through it. She'll accept. Elaine is awake again and taking charge. Eren tries to stop her, but her mind is made up. She reaches out to Keto and introduces herself as Elaine. That awkward handshake seals it. The trip begins with Keto in front. His clients, though, keep a huge distance behind him. Eventually, Keto stops and turns around. He asks if they're staying a little too far back. For their own safety, they should probably stay closer. Instead, both of them wave frantically and insist they're fine. Since no one's around, this distance works great. Keto just shrugs. If they want to act weird, that's on them. So he turns back around and keeps moving. Elaine watches him and wonders how things got this bad. Her thoughts drift back to the guild the night before. Keto had introduced himself with a big smile, not noticing how scared they were. Elaine, meanwhile, felt like her heart might stop. He'd grinned and told them to trust him. Their safety was guaranteed. All she managed was a tiny yes, while panicking inside. Even now, she still thinks hiring him may have been a huge mistake. When night comes, Keto says it's time to camp. He checks on the two of them and asks if they're doing all right. It's too dark to keep going, which is exactly why they left so late. Eren nervously agrees while clinging to Elaine's arm. By now, Keto realizes people's fear of his kind runs deep. Then he reaches for a pouch to set up camp. He tosses out a magic item, and a full 10 appears at once. Eren and Elaine just stare, shocked. An artifact? How does a barbarian have one? Keto blinks at the question. To him, it's no big deal. He earned it from clearing a bunch of requests. That casual answer only confuses them even more. He offers them the tent, but Elaine asks what he'll do. Keto brushes it off. Sleeping outside is normal for him. Then he says he'll stay up all night on guard, mentioning he once went a month being hunted by monsters without sleep. Seeing their reaction, he just smiles and tells them to rest easy. Elaine quickly insists they should also take turns keeping watch. She doesn't want him overdoing it. Keto tries to refuse, but they won't hear it. He thinks he's failing to win their trust, never realizing they're scared he'll kill them in their sleep. The next morning, Elaine crawls out of the tent looking awful. Eren isn't any better. He looks half dead beside it. Elaine steps out holding her stomach, which growls loudly. Keto hears it. Hungry? Then he tells her to wait. He'll make something. Elaine just stares at him, completely confused. Then to her shock, this giant barbarian starts cooking like an expert. She can hardly believe it. A barbarian who cooks? Eren, already drooling, blurts out and asks if he actually knows what he's doing. Keto shrugs and says it's just a hobby. He remembers the snowfield where others ate monster meat raw, but he taught himself to make real meals instead. What started as survival turned into skill. The ingredients were so dangerous they nearly killed him, but after enough trial and error, he mastered them. Now he proudly says he can cook anywhere. Compared to home, this is easy. Before long, he serves them shrimp pasta that looks restaurant quality. Elaine panics. She quickly says she doesn't like greasy food and pulls out dry jerky instead. Eren awkwardly does the same. Keto doesn't mind. He just says that's too bad and eats the pasta himself. Elaine watches, badly wanting some, but fear wins. She still can't trust food made by a barbarian. By the third night of their trip, Elaine is clearly in bad shape. She's in pain and her feet are badly red. Eren rushes over in panic. Princess, are you all right? For 3 days now, he's been caring for a sick Elaine. Life as a sheltered princess didn't prepare her for travel like this. She finally wakes and gives him a weak smile, saying she's fine. Instead, she worries about him, pointing out that he must be exhausted from taking extra watch shifts. Eren just smiles and says he's all right. He even jokes that old men don't need much sleep. Elaine gives him a grateful look, then passes out again. As he watches over her, Eren's expression hardens. He sees her as family now and silently vows to protect her, even if he doesn't survive. The next morning, the smell of breakfast fills the camp. Eren and Elaine sit there miserably, stuck with dry rations, while Keto makes another amazing meal right in front of them. At last, Elaine snaps and jumps up, startling Eren. She says she's stepping away for a bit, and Keto bluntly asks if it's for the bathroom. He even apologizes, which completely throws Elaine off. You can see her trying to process it. Something about him doesn't match what she expected. Without another word, she walks off. Watching them, Keto finally speaks up. He knows they don't trust him, but he's their escort. Holding out a perfectly cooked steak, he asks for at least a little faith. Then he adds that he's human too, and can get hurt. That hits harder than expected. Eren immediately feels guilty. Flustered, he says he understands. Keto then offers the food. It's venison. Will he eat it? Eren is completely drawn in. One look at that steak and he's already lost. Meanwhile, Elaine has gone to a stream for a hoff by herself, trying not to cry as she forces down her dry jerky. She's starving, her legs hurt, and she's almost done. Still, she tries to hang on, telling herself Eren must have it even worse. That noble thinking falls apart, though, when she looks through the bushes and spots Eren happily eating the venison. To her, it's a total betrayal. Her most trusted knight, her protector, eating food from the enemy. She softly calls his name, crushed. Caught red-handed, Eren drops his fork and blurts out, "Princess, this isn't what it looks like." Ketil just watches the whole scene with curious eyes, Elaine marches over and grabs Aaron. What part isn't true? We agreed to stay on guard around barbarians. Aaron tries to say that maybe, just maybe, Catel isn't that bad. Elaine refuses to hear it. Then Catel speaks up, looking at her in surprise. So that's why you wouldn't touch my food. He pieces it together. The split night watch was for the same reason. You didn't trust me either, huh? The words hang there, and both of them realize they messed up. Catel only sighs. He knows people hate his kind, and some barbarians probably earned that bad name. He also knows saying he's different won't help. Then he gets an idea. A sly smile spreads across his face. He looks at the two of them. There's one thing you've got wrong. Then still smiling, he drops the bomb. I am not a barbarian. Just like that, Catel starts explaining, and his clients are left speechless. He adds more drama. To be exact, I was born one, but I wasn't raised that way. Aaron and Aline just stand there trying to make sense of it. So Catel spins a tragic story about his tribe being wiped out and a noble adventurer raising him. All while thinking with a straight face. I made every bit of that up, but it works. His main point is simple. He may have barbarian blood, but he was raised civilized. He acts completely sincere, but inside he knows it's all made up nonsense. Still, it's working. They both look deeply embarrassed. Aline thinks back to how they treated him, all because of one label. She starts to think he's probably dealt with that bias his whole life, and yet he stayed kind to them. Full of shame, she gives a real apology and admits fear blinded her. Catel answers with a soft smile. Inside, he's thinking, got them. While Aline is still processing it, he offers his hand. She looks confused for a second by the gesture, but takes it. With that, the tension breaks. Aline finally smiles at him. But nearby, a powerful figure is watching the Tower Master. Lich. He's using a spell to observe them, though he can't hear anything. Even so, he decides Kane was right. This barbarian really is strange. Catel seems far more civilized than the others, so Lich moves in for a closer look. Big mistake. The second he shifts, Ketel's eyes sharpen. Lich freezes. Did he really notice me? Aline sees Catel suddenly stop. He stares into the trees and says someone's there. Wait here. Before she can ask anything, he tells her he'll be right back. Then he kicks off the ground and closes the gap in an instant, appearing right above the stunned Lich. Panicking, Lich throws up a fire shield just as Catel slams down on him. He's shocked. The barrier was supposed to be strong. But when the dust settles, Catel is standing there without a scratch. Before Lich can react, Catel drives his face into the dirt and warns him not to try anything stupid. The tough act vanishes at once. Lich blurts out the first thing he can think of. I admire you, Sir Catel, leaving Catel completely confused. After getting the man's fake name, Patrick, Catel drags him back to camp like a misbehaving cat. Aline is totally confused, and Catel just shrugs. No clue. He was sneaking around and then claimed he's my biggest fan. Dangling by his collar, Patrick starts rambling about how Catel is his hero and role model. Of course, he's lying through his teeth. His thoughts make that clear. He only wants to get close to his target. Catel doesn't believe a word of it. He can't let this so-called fan go unless he's sure the guy isn't a threat, and then he gets a terrible idea. Still holding the shady mage, he grins and says, this should work. Poor Lich is left staring, wondering what in the world is happening. Ketel's big idea? He ties him up, one of the strongest mages alive. Lich had prepared that whole Patrick disguise for his spy mission, and now the plan is stuck fast in rope. Catel gives the knot one last hard pull, clearly proud of himself. Yep, that'll do. Then he turns and says, all right, let's go, dragging his captive along like a very confused dog. Patrick's face turns pale. He's being hauled through the woods like baggage, and his pride is taking a beating. He lets out a long sigh. This has never happened to him before. Still, there is one upside. He gets a close look at Catel. As he's dragged along, he thinks back to a report from Swordmaster Kane. It described Ketel's insane speed and the raw strength to smash through magic with his fists. Even in this weaker human body, Patrick thinks he could handle a superhuman, so he starts wondering if Catel is really hero class. At last, Aline speaks up. Lord Catel, there's something I need to tell you. Catel glances back, so you're finally ready to talk. Aline is surprised he already knew she was hiding something. The secretive night behavior gave it away. Catel says it was obvious, and Aline looks completely caught. He says he understands why trusting him was hard, and Aline apologizes for real, ready to tell him everything. She even says he can walk away from the quest if the truth is too much for him. But just as she's about to explain, Catel cuts in. Wait, someone's here. Right then, the nearby bushes rustle. Aline flinches. They aren't alone. Out of the brush come two knights in heavy armor. As more surround them, Catel looks at Aline. Seems they're here for you. Aline freezes. The lead knight introduces himself as Captain Lucentio Edenheimer and greets her as Princess Aline of the Lucian Kingdom. On the side, the tied-up mage hears that and realizes this just became much more interesting. Captain Lucentio steps forward and says they've been searching everywhere. The king is worried, so please come with us. But instead of relief, Aline looks terrified. The captain then turns to Catel and basically says, thanks for guarding the runaway princess, we'll handle things now. Aline answers with one word, no. Everyone is stunned, but she presses on. Who are you? Lucentio looks lost. Aline clenches her fist and demands again, who are you really? He starts to repeat his name, but she snaps, don't mock me. I know the real captain, and you're not him. She accuses the imposter of taking over the castle, replacing her friends and family, and demands to know what he did to her real parents. Meanwhile, Patrick makes tiny motions behind his back and uses magic to check the captain, only to find he's fully human. Aline keeps shouting, "You want to eat me too and steal our kingdom, don't you?" Tears run down her face, but her voice is firm. "I won't let that happen. I'll avenge everyone who disappeared." The knight captain listens to all of it in silence, then lets out a heavy sigh. He turns to the others. "You heard her. The princess is delusional." Aline explodes. "Delusional?" But he calmly tells her to think clearly. Is she really saying everyone changed except her? Could that even be true? For the first time, her certainty starts to break. He says she needs treatment right away and reaches out. "Your Highness, let's end this and come with us." Cornered and with nowhere to turn, Aline's hope starts to collapse. She whispers, "Please, someone." And right then, a voice cuts in. "What are you doing?" Aline looks up and sees Kettle step between her and the knight. The captain glares and orders him aside, but Kettle just smirks. "Sorry, can't do that." Aline can only stare, stunned. Lucentio glares harder and demands again that Kettle move. Kettle doesn't budge. "Not happening." Lucentio's expression darkens. "If you won't move, I'll use force." He charges without waiting, bringing his huge sword straight at Kettle's head, but Kettle stops it by grabbing his face. Then he casually throws the commander away. The other knights just stare in shock. "Commander?" Then they turn to Kettle and demand to know what he's doing. His answer is simple. "He attacked first, and my job is to drive away threats to my employer." Nearby, Lucento struggles back up, holding his stomach, still reeling from the throw. Knowing strength won't work, he tries a different angle and insists the princess is delusional. Kettle shuts that down at once. "You still don't get it. My job is to trust my employer." Elaine watches him, and for the first time in a while, hope returns to her eyes. With talking failed, Lucento growls that they're all insane. Kettle smiles back. "That's not your call." Then he turns to Elaine, who looks confused. He points out that the knights showed up without any sign at all. She doesn't get it, so Kettle puts it simply. "They appeared out of nowhere." That makes both Elaine and Patrick realize something is very wrong. Kettle faces the knights again. "So how did you show up that suddenly?" They say nothing. Lucentio tries to brush it off. Does that Lucentio cuts him off? "Stop stalling and hand over the princess." Kettle narrows his eyes. When they refuse to answer, he says he'll take her to the kingdom of Day and Tavarian himself. Her eyes fill with tears. Someone is finally on her side. Not even her own family ever believed her before. Lucento is done talking. His hand drops to his sword. He's ready to fight. Kettle calmly tells the others to stay back. Elaine trusts him now, but still begs him to be careful. These were the kingdom's strongest men, and Lucento orders them to draw their swords. Kettle only smiles, almost excited. From the side, Patrick checks their stats. The knights are second tier, and all of them can use mystic arts. Lucento, though, is first tier. Then the order comes. Bring down the barbarian, even if they have to kill him. The knights rush in together, boxing Kettle in with flashing blades. He doesn't move. Purple energy bursts out from him, and the battle starts for real. Kettle goes right on the attack, dropping them one after another with clean, brutal moves. A shockwave explodes from his body and blasts several armored knights away. As they slam to the ground, Kettle casually says group attacks are annoying. Lucento snaps and yells for his men not to stop. All 6 attack at once, diving in from every side. It still doesn't work. Kettle turns into a storm, grabbing each knight the moment they come down and throwing them aside. At last, Lucento charges in himself, his sword glowing green as he roars for Kettle to die. Elaine cries out in fear, sure this is the end for the man protecting her. But when the blade drops, Kettle catches it with his teeth. Lucento just freezes, completely stunned. Then Kettle's eyes flash purple, and with one crunch, he breaks the enchanted sword apart. The impact sends Lucento flying back. Kettle stays where he is and asks if they still want more. The surviving knights are already on their knees, beaten, shaking. Lucento orders a retreat, and just like that, they vanish. Kettle turns back to the others and tells Elaine he'll see this through. But first, he wants the full truth. No more hiding things. She nods right away. While the others recover, Patrick is busy having a full mental breakdown. Sidura was supposed to be unstoppable, and Kettle caught it with his teeth. Patrick can't get over it. This body isn't just tough. It can cancel all kinds of magic. Kettle is a complete mystery. Later, once they're gathered by the fire, Kettle finally asks for the whole story. Aaron's face hardens as he drops the truth. Their kingdom has been replaced. By the time he and the princess understood what was happening, it had already taken over everything. Kettle gets it at once, that's why they ran. Aaron says if they had stayed, they would have been replaced next. He explains that this strange problem began about a year ago, and that detail catches Kettle's attention. 1 year ago, the same timing the Inquisitor of Quaz mentioned. He remembers her warning, the Demon Realm seal was leaking. Dungeons were appearing everywhere, and evil things started showing up all a year ago. That lines up too well to ignore. Even that strange guy from Kettle's last quest said something similar. He thought it was nonsense then, but maybe it wasn't. Aaron goes on saying they never found where the distortion began. They called in strong mages and mystics for help, but every one of them got replaced too. Interested, Kettle asks how Aaron could tell the fakes apart. Aaron says he can't fully explain it, he just feels it. Something about the air around those people feels wrong. Even when they act normal, that twisted feeling never goes away. He didn't believe the princess at first either, not until impossible things started happening. Then Aaron starts explaining how it began back when he managed the castle servants. He talks about a maid named Kathy, a shy girl who was terrified of almost everything, especially ghost stories. He used to tease her with scary stories all the time. Then one day, Kathy suddenly stopped reacting. No screams, no fear, nothing. At first, he thought she'd simply gotten over it. The real warning came later. Part of Kathy's work was cleaning the giant castle statues, and she hated it. One day, a huge stone statue fell on her. She should have died, but somehow she lived. The creepy part was her reaction. She wasn't scared at all, only worried she'd be punished for breaking it. That's when Aaron knew the person before him wasn't the real Kathy. Kettle sums it up. Someone afraid of everything suddenly wasn't afraid of death. Very interesting. Aaron says she looked the same, but the real Kathy was gone. After that, he started testing other people in the castle and found that most of them were fakes too. When Kettle asks if that's why they fled, Aaron says yes, they knew they'd be next. So Kettle asks the obvious next question, why go to Do di Antivarian? Elaine answers that only its king can perform something called a human declaration. She explains an old legend from the age when humans lived beside many other races. A man wanted a kingdom only for humans, so he made a deal with an unnamed god. That god gave him one power, the ability to tell what is human and what isn't. With that power, he built a kingdom that later became di Antivarian. Elaine says only that founder's bloodline can use the human declaration. Kettle smiles, so something like that exists. This world really doesn't get boring. He tells her the plan makes sense. Elaine looks up, teary-eyed, and asks if he's really willing to keep going. He answers with a gentle smile, nothing changed. He promised to escort her, and he'll keep that promise. Relieved, Elaine thanks him with all her heart. Then she swears that if he completes the request, she'll grant any wish she wants. Kettle accepts smoothly and says he'll look forward to it. That makes Aaron panic. Later that night, Patrick slips over to Kettle and asks the big question. Does he really believe her? Kettle glances at him, not completely, but he thinks she's telling the truth. Patrick argues that the turquoise knights they fought were definitely human. Kettle quietly agrees, he thinks so too. Patrick reminds him what's at stake. He's making an enemy of an entire nation, and just knowing this secret could get him killed. So he asks if Kettle is really doing all this just for a contract. After a pause, Kettle admits that's only part of it. Then a huge grin spreads across his face and he reveals the real reason. He says it'd be a waste to miss something this interesting, leaving Patrick speechless. Kettle makes it clear he's doing this because it's exciting. Patrick just stares, not sure if he's talking to a hero or a lunatic. Then he asks if Corral is only here because of the contract. Corral lowers his gaze for a moment and partly agrees, but says more than that, this is a very interesting story. His eyes light up with excitement. He isn't here for money. Patrick is losing it. He's seriously asking if they're risking all this just for fun. Kettle's eyes glow purple as he flashes a sharp grin and asks what more anyone could need. Corral is just as fired up by the adventure, a being that can replace someone without anyone noticing. That's what fascinates him. Patrick, though, has a different reaction. Deep down, he wants to study Corral, and by study, he means cut him apart, piece by piece, to learn how his power works. The next day, the trip continues. Patrick gives up trying to understand any of this and decides to just watch what happens. Then an arrow cuts through the air, but Corral snatches it out of the sky. The sudden attack throws Elaine and Aaron into panic. Corral, though, only smirks and says ambush tactics aren't a bad idea. A second later, 4 knights jump down from the trees. Corral calmly adds that it still isn't the right answer. One pulse of power sends all 4 flying. They crash down so hard their armor splits, and one of them spits blood. The battered knights scramble away, calling him a monster. Corral looks faintly pleased. Elaine tells him he's amazing, but he just shrugs and asks if they weren't weak. Elaine hesitates, then asks why he's letting them live. She thinks he's holding back for their sake, but Corral says it isn't because of them at all. With a sly smile, he looks back ahead. There's something he wants to confirm. Right then, another group of identical knights appears and demands the princess again. Corral watches them without a hint of concern. They're acting like they were made to repeat the same move. In an instant, he has one by the throat. While the others are already down, he checks the knight's armor and notes that he destroyed it a few hours earlier. The others don't get it, but Corral points to the faint marks on the chest plate. It's exactly the same. Very interesting. He drops the knight and lets them retreat again. Elaine is confused, so Corral explains the impossible. Their broken armor and swords were fully restored. Erwin confirms magic that's strong should take at least a full day and a huge setup. This was far too fast. Corral agrees. Something else is happening, and he's finally putting it together. He's figured it out. The knights are basically respawning. They turn into red spirits, then come back completely restored. Corral says there's only one last thing to test. Right on time, the knights appear again, shouting the same line. Corral pays them no attention. Instead, he turns to a line, thinking about his final check. He raises his axe, and in the next instant, the blade is wet with blood. Standing over the dead knight, Corral notes that his axe met real resistance, like it struck a human body. He looks at his shaken clients and says, this should be enough to prove his idea. Elaine steps forward, clearly disturbed, but Corral cuts in with a direct question. Can you do it? Her mind jumps back to the time she watched those knights from a balcony, especially a young man named King. She remembers how he changed into someone she barely knew, but watching him truly die still broke her. In that memory, she screamed for them to stop, yet the corrupted knight only kept demanding she be handed over. Back in the present, everyone is frozen, trying to understand what they just saw. Erwin Fornaci di Tercia is horrified, and Aline's reaction gives Corral the answer he wanted. With a small grin, he says his theory is confirmed. That night around the campfire, Aline finally speaks. She says what no one can deny. They really did die. Karal watches the fire and answers grimly, yes. Aline shivers as she remembers their glowing purple eyes and eerie smiles. Karal goes back to what he heard about Kanat fearing death and wonders if that's because these things can't die at all. Whatever they are, he says, they're no longer human. Then he hands the trembling princess a bowl of soup and asks if she knows what's happening. All she can say is that she doesn't. Aline quietly says that returning after death isn't really living. Still, she offers one guess. Maybe they came from the demonic realm. At those words, Karal's face turns deadly serious. His whole mood shifts. The demonic realm? He asks. Aline confirms it, calling it a twisted place beyond understanding. If these respawning things came from there, she says, it would explain a lot. Just then, Karal gets a new quest notification. He immediately wonders if his system only reacts to matters tied to the demonic realm. But Eren quickly rejects that idea, saying demons can't simply enter their world. Karal looks puzzled, while Eren insists no demon has crossed over since the beginning of history. Smirking, Karal points out that's just belief based on old stories, not proof. Aline reminds them that strange things have been happening lately. A tense Eren admits he has a point, and Karal asks if the distortions from a year ago could have affected the demonic realm too. The princess listens closely, then grows dead serious and says that's very possible. Karal thinks hard about what terrible things might have slipped through. Meanwhile, Patrick quietly thinks that's a rich thing for Karal to say. The next morning, their unwelcome visitors return. The knights are back again demanding the princess. Karal doesn't look concerned at all. He's grinning like he's having fun. Passing another corpse, he notes this makes 3 deaths, and every time they return perfectly restored. Aline clenches her fist in disgust and calls them vile monsters. Karal treats it like a puzzle and starts wondering what they really want. Elaine guesses they plan to consume her kingdom, build up their numbers, and conquer the continent. Karal doesn't agree. He says it's probably not that simple. If their goal was just to destroy the kingdom, he points out, they could have killed her long ago. They've had plenty of chances, and they never attack at night, when humans are weakest. As he speaks, he casually knocks another knight aside. If they're immortal, why keep using hit-and-run attacks? These things don't behave like monsters, he tells the stunned princess. They act like they still think they're human. Then, with a dangerous grin, he says he's had a great idea. Aline and Eren immediately look worried. Karal's idea is simple: kidnapping. He captures one of the knights, ties him up, and ignores his threats. Clapping his hands with a friendly smile, Karal says it's time to talk. Even Patrick can only watch in disbelief, thinking Karal is completely insane. Erwin Fornaci di Terzia loses his temper and demands to know what Karal is doing. Karal calmly says they're just having an honest conversation. That makes Erwin Fornaci di Terzia snap. He wants to talk to a monster. The captured knight looks confused by that. A monster? What are you saying? I'm human. Aline yells at him to be quiet. She calls him disgusting for pretending to sound human. She watched him die and return again and again. There's no way she'll believe he's human. Still, the knight keeps insisting they aren't monsters. He begs the princess to believe him, and that pushes Aline over the edge. She screams at him not to treat her like she's crazy. She accuses them of devouring her parents, and says her worst fear is that they want to turn her into one of them. The knight quickly denies that and says no, the princess will stay exactly as she is now. That wording makes her stop. What does he mean by that? Karal and Patrick both react at once. The knight admits he doesn't know the full plan, but he's certain of one thing. Both of them must return to the kingdom. Aline turns away, saying there's no point listening to a monster speak nonsense. But before she can leave, Karal stops her. Realization spreads across his face. So that's how it is, he says. Then he asks Aline one chilling question. Does she consider herself human? The question hangs there, leaving Aline confused. She scoffs and asks if the answer isn't obvious. Karal's eyes glow as he quietly says, I see. But Aline misunderstands, thinking he's calling her a monster. Before she can finish, a wet tearing sound cuts through the air. Her eyes go wide in horror as a grotesque scaled fleshy limb bursts from her chest. No one can make sense of it. Karal only watches with grim certainty, while Aline stares down in shock at the thing that came out of her own body. Was that nightmare scene real? Princess Aline jolts awake, gasping. Eren rushes over to check on her, but she's still dazed and has no idea where she is. Then it all comes rushing back. She remembers Karal's words and looks down, expecting a hole in her body. Then Karal's voice cuts in. So you're awake? He stands there with his arms crossed. Panicking, Aline asks what happened after that thing burst out of her. Karal calmly explains that she had a wound that should have killed any normal person, but now she's perfectly fine. As she struggles to take that in, Karal adds the worst part. She was fully restored, just like those knights. He even checked Eren, and he's the same. That's when the truth hits. Aline, it's already too late. She's one of them. A little later, Karal steps outside and finds Patrick by the fire. Patrick immediately asks how the princess is handling the truth. Karal says she's falling apart, but Patrick replies she's coping better than expected. Then he gets straight to it. Since when did Karal know? Karal says he had suspicions, but when did he know for sure? From the beginning, he says, Karal had sensed a familiar presence on Aline and Eren from the start, something Patrick's magic never noticed. That wasn't his only clue. He also noticed Aline wouldn't eat his food and had lived almost entirely on jerky for days. Karal points out that a sheltered princess couldn't keep that up by willpower alone. Patrick is genuinely impressed. Just then, Eren calls for Karal. Aline steps out of the tent, her face now steady and resolved. She announces they're going to the Dayan Talashmutharian kingdom. Karal smiles, glad she's finally decided. But before they can leave, he speaks to the empty woods. He says it's time to come out. He didn't sense magic, just trusted his instincts. Karal grins, pleased he was right. A figure suddenly appears out of nowhere. It's an old wizard. Aline and Patrick can only stare. Karal is mainly surprised by the invisibility spell. The wizard introduces himself as Adamant Raja, chief mage of the kingdom of Lutine. He says he's here to take them back home. Karal tightens his grip on his axe, but the mage says that won't be needed. Turning to Alanine, he tells her it's time to return to the palace. He warns that this trip could cause a diplomatic problem. A tear runs down Alanine's cheek as she asks what any of that matters now. She says she's just a monster acting human. The wizard repeats the word monster, then says yes, they've changed, but that doesn't mean they've lost themselves. Looking right at her, he says only one thing has changed. Adamant calmly explains that Aline is simply becoming more complete, and he assures her she is still the princess of her kingdom. That sounds kind at first, but then his stare turns cold. He says her real fate is to become their perfect queen. A perfect queen? That sounds a lot like a puppet ruler. Ketel brings up the ship of Theseus, the famous ship from Athens. As the wood rotted, each plank got replaced with a stronger one. Over time, every part was changed until none of the original ship was left. So Ketel asks the big question. After all that, is it still the same ship? Then he says the kingdom of Lutane is basically one giant ship of Theseus, and Aline immediately understands what he means. Right then, the old mage steps forward. His presence alone feels overwhelming. Looking straight at Aline, he calmly tells her to return. Her place is in the Lutane kingdom. Aline can barely answer. His demand leaves her shaken, and she has no idea what to do. Katido leans in with a sharp grin. Want me to? I can make him disappear for you. The mage shifts his glare to Katido. Barbarian, you already know we're the same. So why stop me? Katido doesn't even flinch. So what? He couldn't care less what the mage is. Standing between them, he makes one thing clear. He's here to protect his employer. Meanwhile, Aline is still spiraling, stuck on the truth that she may not even be human. She feels fake, like she's not really Aline at all, just something else. Keto cuts that off with a firm no. Aline breaks down crying as he says exactly what she needed. To him, she is Aline. He never knew the old Aline. The one who hired him and traveled with him is the only Aline he knows. That's the Aline he wants to protect. Then he leaves the choice to her. What do you want to do, Aline? She hesitates, clutching her chest. Fear and doubt are written all over her face. Then something inside her settles. Her eyes harden with resolve. She says she doesn't want to go back. Ketel smiles, satisfied. His employer has spoken, so that's the end of it. The mage's face darkens and he lets out a sigh. So this is how it ends. Ketel agrees. Then he gives an order. Patrick, I'm counting on you. The Lich leads Aline and Erwin Fornaci de Tercia away from the fight. Once they're clear, the mage sneers. You seem to be enjoying this, Barbarian. Ketel answers with a wide grin. He really is. He can already tell the old man is a strong mage. Now he wants to see what kind of magic he's got. Adamant's robe glows blue as he warns Ketel he'll regret this. He starts gathering a huge amount of power and chants an old spell, warping everything around him with magic. But before he can finish, Ketel bursts forward in purple energy and appears right in front of him. One punch lands, and Adamant explodes into blood and gore. Ketel clenches his bloody fist and sums it up. The best way to handle a mage is to kill them before they cast. Then he notices the blood starting to turn into a swirling red mist, just as expected. The mist quickly rebuilds the mage, who now looks completely terrified. He can't even process what happened. Ketel moves so fast he couldn't react at all. Ketel wonders if that regeneration has a limit, then casually stomps the ground. Huge stone pillars burst up and impale the mage. Ketel watches, a little surprised that worked too. Adamant is torn apart again, but his eyes burn with rage as he launches a counterattack. Thick roots erupt from the ground and twist around him into a giant wooden golem. Then the thing turns to ash, releasing a huge wave of fire that consumes its own body. Watching this, Patrick realizes Adamant is throwing out spells that eat up massive amounts of mana. Then it hits him. Adamant may have endless mana because his body and magic both restore together. Even so, Patrick already knows how this ends. Adamant chose the wrong enemy. The giant fire spell goes off, but when the flames clear, Ketel is nowhere in sight. Before Adamant can react, Ketel is behind him with a charged fist. In that moment, the mage understands this isn't a man, it's a monster, and Ketel is only getting excited, wondering if all mages are this strong. Adamant's eyes go wide as Ketel lunges faster than anyone can follow. In a flash of purple energy and blood, his arm whips through with a brutal backhand and sends the mage's head flying. Ketel stands over the body and looks at his blood-covered fist with a strange look. Something about the blood feels off. The headless body breaks into red particles and quickly forms Adamant again, fully restored and shouting at Ketel, asking what he is. Adamant is furious now, like this whole fight is some sick joke. Ketel only gives him a calm, almost mocking smile and says he's just a normal barbarian. Finally, Adamant gets serious and says they're done testing each other. The ground starts shaking as he gathers an enormous amount of magic. He rises into the air inside a swirling storm of power and declares he'll fight at full strength. Ketel just grins, excited to see more, and he means it. In an instant, Adamant traps Aline and the others inside a violent magical storm. Ketel calmly judges what he's seeing. This is no amateur. It's a veteran mage who can summon a disaster like it's nothing. Even Keatle has to admit it's impressive. He thanks Adamant for showing him something interesting. Then he decides the show is over and takes one slow step forward. With a stomp, a massive wave of purple power erupts outward. The shockwave tears through everything and throws Adamant back. The mage is left stunned. Meanwhile, the rest of the group is completely safe inside the barrier, just staring. Patrick can't believe it. Keatle's a mage, yet he felt no magic. Was that really just a stomp? The impact leaves Keatle standing in a huge crater, and of course he isn't hurt at all. Adamant is horrified. His ultimate magic was beaten by a so-called normal barbarian. The old mage trembles with rage, his pride wrecked. This is impossible. He screams that it can't be happening just as a dark purple aura starts rising from Keatle. That finally breaks Adamant's nerve. Keatle slams his fist into the ground and sends out another shockwave, this one glowing red. The mage's body turns to red mist, then forms again. He admits Keatle is strong, but still insists he can't be beaten. Keatle agrees normal attacks won't finish this. He opens his hand and a jagged dark shard appears inside his glove. Then he asks, "How about this?" The mage can only stare, confused. Keatle closes his fist and the air around him bursts apart. A huge shockwave erupts, wiping out the ground around him. When it settles, Keatle stands there smoking slightly, looking mildly surprised. He opens his hand and the shard is gone, crushed into sparkling dust. Adamant's eyes widen in horror. He knows exactly what Keatle just destroyed. Keatle lifts the dust with a grim smile and asks if this is his true nature. That sends Adamant over the edge, furious. He screams, "You bastard!" Keatle narrows his eyes and asks if he wants to keep going. Then he makes it clear if this fight continues, Adamant's life will be on the line too. The mage stays silent in the red mist as the eerie energy fades. Before vanishing, he leaves one last warning. Keatle will pay for this. With that, the battle ends, and Keatle is left standing alone in the middle of a wasteland. After the fight, the party regroups and heads back on the road. At last, they reach their destination. The massive walls of Darren, Tevaharian rise ahead. Patrick stops there, saying this is where he parts ways, since he's a foreigner. Keatle apologizes, but Patrick brushes it off and says traveling with him was fun. Keatle says he feels the same and hopes they meet again. Patrick says they probably will, and sooner than Keatle thinks. Keatle watches him leave, unsure what that meant. Then they head for the gate and a guard immediately shouts for the barbarian to stop and back away. Keatle stays calm. He's clearly been through this before. Before it gets worse, Aline steps forward and orders them to open the gates. She proudly reveals who she is, the first princess of the kingdom of Lutane, Aline Mavrichi, and demands an audience with King Barbosa Demnitfarian, leaving the guards stunned. And it works. Not long after, Keatle is relaxing in a luxurious guest room. He's more than happy with the change, especially thanks to Aline. This bed isn't bad at all. With the escort mission finished, he figures the quest is finally complete. Right then, a blue system window appears. 758th quest complete. Another message follows. Rewards will now be given. Keatle is confused, since he usually doesn't get rewards like this directly. A sharp knock at the door cuts off his thoughts. It's Aline, the noble he escorted through the wasteland. She asks for a moment, and Keatle invites her in. A little later, Keatle asks how things are going. Aline says her audience with the king is set for tomorrow, and she believes that will settle everything. Keatle isn't convinced. To him, this could be where the real trouble starts. Aline seems to feel the same. After a short pause, she softly calls his name. Then she asks him straight out if he knows what really took over her kingdom. Keatle shuts his eyes and admits he does have a few guesses. Then he throws the question back at her. He asks what she thinks her kingdom has actually become. Instead of answering right away, Keatle holds out a shiny rainbow-like shard. He tells the confused Aline this is the true form of whatever replaced them. She just stares at it, totally lost. Keatle explains he had to compress it by force just so normal eyes could see it. He isn't even sure people in this world would understand the idea, but he asks if she follows him. To his surprise, she does. Aline says it's like mana or aura, things you can't see unless they're packed together. That clicks for Keatle. He forgot this world already has invisible powers. Then the meaning of his words finally hits her. Keatle says to think of a person as a giant mass of tiny pieces. From her brain to her blood, her whole body was replaced by them. The thought hits hard and she pulls back, wrapping her arms around herself in disgust. Keatle asks if she's okay, while admitting it's a horrible thing to hear. Shaken, she asks if those particles are dangerous. Keatle gives a small reassuring smile. They seem inactive, and strong force can break them apart. For simplicity, he decides to call them nano. He says each nano is its own being, and together they only copy a human shape. That's why normal injuries don't kill them. It's like trying to kill a lake by cutting water. When Aline whispers immortal, he confirms it. That also explains why they don't understand death. But Aline catches a problem in that idea. She points out that she fears death, so by his logic, she shouldn't be like them. Keatle admits she's right. Then he offers a new guess. She may be going through some kind of mutation. That leaves her stunned. Later, Keatle lies back, resting on a ridiculously luxurious bed in the Dian Tavarian palace. He wonders if Aline has met the king yet. The thought of seeing an actual fantasy king, one said to have power from a god, makes him smile. He wants to see what the man is really like. Then the door suddenly opens. A stern knight calls to him. The king wishes to see you, Barbarian. The knight Maximus leads Keatle through the palace, and gives him a warning. Show proper respect if he values his life. Catol only smiles and says he'll remember that. At the throne room, Maximus announces him. Catol walks in and pauses in surprise. Aline is there along with the king and someone else he recognizes. King Barbosa Dean Tveharion speaks first, asking if this is the barbarian who escorted Princess Elaine. Catol answers with a respectful bow. He introduces himself politely as Catol the Barbarian. That manner's first approach catches Maximus and the king off guard. The king even has to cough before continuing. He says Princess Elaine told him Catol is unlike other barbarians. Catol just grins and says that's what people keep telling him. Then his gaze shifts to the man beside the throne. Is that Patrick? Elaine quickly gets flustered and explains that man is the tower master. Patrick immediately starts sweating. Trying to act calm, he says Catol must have him confused with someone else, even though he's panicking inside. Catol plays along with a smile. He says he must have been mistaken and apologizes. Patrick forces a relieved smile. He can't believe Catol saw through a disguise that changes appearance, mana, and even personality. After only one brief meeting, that shouldn't have been possible. But Catol's quiet stare keeps putting him on edge. Maybe that perfect disguise isn't so perfect after all. Catol decides not to expose him and lets it pass for now. Changing topics, Elaine nervously asks about the human declaration. From the throne, the king gives his answer. They are human. He says his ancestors' rule was simple. If someone believes they are human, then they are. So Elaine, Aaron, and even the captured knight all count as human. At that, Elaine's expression drops. The king adds that what they truly wanted was simply to stay human. Catol grins, seeing that as a lucky break for their side. Then he asks the real question. Why was he called here? The king says he already knows about the nano, and the threat is much closer than anyone thought. His own close friend, along with that person's child, has already been devoured by this plague. Patrick adds that the tower is holding them back for now, but before long the whole continent could be replaced. Looking Catol in the eye, the king says he heard Catol knows how to destroy them. Catol lets that sit for a second. Then a slow, dangerous smile spreads across his face. So that's the mission. Extermination. Right then, the blue system window appears with a new quest. Respond to the beings of the demon realm. So much for getting any rest. The captured knight Parman is dragged in bound and screaming before the throne. The king, Maximus, and Patrick all watch to see what Catol can do. Patrick, a literal lich, admits his magic couldn't crack this case. Scans and truth spells both failed. So he hands it over to Catol, the one who has actually fought these things. He's even set up a barrier, basically telling Catol not to hold back. Parman keeps screaming that he already said he's human, while Catol stays completely calm. Looking down at the knight, he thinks about the best way to handle this. Then he decides. Catol opens his eyes and releases his full killing intent. A massive, terrifying pressure that promises death. Parman's face twists in raw fear.